we begin a quiet journey into the life of a figure whose influence on American music remains profound, even decades after his passing. This evening, our focus rests upon Hiram King Williams, known more widely as Hank Williams. He was a man whose brief existence unfolded against the backdrop of the American South, a period of significant change and enduring tradition. Our exploration will not seek to mythologize, nor to dramatize, but rather to observe the trajectory of a human life, tracing its path from humble beginnings to an unexpected early end. Hank Williams was not a distant icon, but a person shaped by his environment, his experiences, and the unique gifts he possessed. His story is one woven into the fabric of the 20th century, reflecting the struggles and aspirations of a particular time and place. As we gently proceed, we will endeavour to understand the circumstances that forged his character, the forces that guided his artistic expression, and the decisions that ultimately defined his legacy. This narrative will unfold deliberately, allowing each chapter of his life to settle in the mind with a sense of calm contemplation. We will move chronologically from his birth in rural Alabama through the formative years of childhood, the early stirrings of musical talent, and the gradual, then meteoric, rise to prominence. We will consider the individuals who influenced him, the places he inhabited, and the sounds that emerged from his creative spirit. Our purpose is to provide a detailed, yet tranquil, account. There will be no urgency, no heightened emotion, merely a steady progression through the documented facts of his journey. We invite you to simply listen, to absorb the information at a gentle pace, and to allow the quiet unfolding of this historical narrative to accompany you. The life of Hank Williams, in all its complexity and brevity, offers a rich tapestry for this meditative exploration. We are simply observers, tracing the lines of a life lived and the enduring echoes it left behind. The calendar marked September 17th, 1923, a Tuesday, when Hiram King Williams entered the world. His birthplace was a small, unassuming community named Mount Olive, nestled within Butler County, Alabama. This was a place defined by its earth and its seasons, far removed from the bustling centres of commerce or the hurried pace of modern life. The home itself was a modest dwelling, characteristic of the rural South during that era, reflecting a life of simplicity and self-reliance. The landscape surrounding Mount Olive at that time was predominantly agricultural. Fields stretched outward, often cultivated with cotton, a staple crop that dictated the rhythm of life for many families. The air was thick with the sense of growing things, of turned soil, and the distant wood smoke from cooking fires. Sounds were those of nature, the chirping of insects, the rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze, the calls of birds, and perhaps the lowing of cattle. The hum of machinery was less common, replaced by the creak of wooden wagons and the steady rhythm of manual labour. This was an America slowly finding its footing after the Great War. Yet in these quiet, isolated pockets of the South, the changes felt more gradual, less immediate. News travelled slowly, or often by word of mouth or through the pages of a well-worn newspaper. Entertainment was largely homemade, centred around family gatherings, church services, and the shared experience of storytelling and music. The vast distances between homesteads fostered a sense of community, but also a deep personal independence. The infant Hiram King was born into this environment, where the sun rose and set with predictable regularity, and the cycle of planting and harvesting governed existence. There was a quiet dignity in this way of life, a resilience born of close communion with the land. The challenges were many, often physical and demanding, but there was also a profound connection to the natural world and to the enduring traditions that had sustained generations. This rural Alabama soil infused with history and hard work, formed the earliest canvas upon which the story of Hank Williams would begin to be painted. It was a world of quiet observation, where the nuances of human experience were often expressed through unspoken understanding and the simple melodies that echoed through the fields. The nascent life of Hiram King Williams unfolded within the dynamic of his parents, Lon and Lily Williams. Lon Williams, his father, was a logger by trade, a profession that demanded physical strength and an intimate knowledge of the forest that dominated the Alabama landscape. Beyond his work in the timber camps, Lon carried the silent weight of his service in the First World War. The experiences of that global conflict, though rarely spoken of directly, often cast long shadows over the lives of those who returned, influencing their health and their temperament in subtle yet profound ways. Lily Williams, Hank's mother, presented a contrasting but equally formidable presence. She was a woman characterized by an innate resilience and a quiet, unyielding determination. In an era where women often managed the household with limited resources, Lily possessed an entrepreneurial spirit and a practical acumen that would prove essential for the family's survival and progress. Her strength was not outwardly boisterous, but rather a deep internal resolve that manifested in her actions and decisions. The early years of Lon and Lily's marriage were not without their trials. The demands of rural life were constant, and the economic realities often presented significant challenges. Lon's health began to decline steadily after Hank's birth, a condition that medical professionals of the time struggled to fully diagnose or effectively treat. The specifics of his ailment remained somewhat obscure, but its impact was clear. It rendered him increasingly unable to perform the physically arduous work of logging, and it progressively affected his mental state. This gradual deterioration of Lon's health inevitably placed an immense burden upon Lily. She became the primary caregiver and increasingly the sole provider for the family. Her determination became the central pillar of their household, a quiet force that guided their daily existence. She managed the finances, tended to the children, and sought opportunities to earn income wherever she could, often through resourceful means that went beyond traditional roles. The struggles within the family, particularly Lon's declining health and subsequent periods of institutionalization, would profoundly shape Hank's formative years. The absence of a consistently present and healthy father figure, coupled with the unwavering presence of a strong, resourceful mother, created a unique emotional landscape for the young boy. Lily's strength was not merely a personal attribute. It was a foundational element of Hank's early life, a constant against a backdrop of uncertainty, instilling in him, perhaps unconsciously, a sense of perseverance and an acute awareness of life's unpredictable nature. From his earliest years, Hank Williams contended with a significant physical challenge that would shape his entire existence. He was diagnosed with spina bifida occulta, a congenital condition affecting the spine, or often remaining undetected in individuals. For Hank, however, it manifested as a persistent source of chronic pain. This was not a fleeting discomfort, but a constant companion, a dull ache that resided deep within his lower back, present through his waking hours and often disturbing his sleep. The medical understanding of such conditions in the rural South of the 1920s and 30s was, by modern standards, limited. Effective treatments were scarce, and the primary approach was often one of endurance. For a young boy, this meant learning to live with a physical burden that most children did not experience. Simple activities, like prolonged standing, walking, or even sitting, could exacerbate the discomfort. The world for Hank was subtly but distinctly different. Filtered through this persistent physical sensation, found this chronic pain exerted a profound influence on his temperament and his developing outlook on life. While other children might have been wholly consumed by unbridled play, Hank often found himself retreating into moments of quiet observation. The constant internal dialogue with his body fostered a degree of introspection from a very young age. He was compelled to listen to himself, to understand the limits and demands of his physical form in a way that many do not until much later in life. The presence of this pain cultivated a discernible sense of melancholy within him. It was not a superficial sadness, but a deeper, more inherent recognition of suffering and vulnerability. This melancholy was a quiet undercurrent, a thread woven into the fabric of his personality. It encouraged a contemplative nature, an inclination to ponder the deeper aspects of existence, perhaps including questions of fate and endurance. This early physical challenge, then, was not merely an affliction, it was a formative element. It contributed to a sensitivity and an emotional depth that would later find expression in his artistic endeavours. The experience of living with constant pain, of navigating the world with an invisible burden, instilled in him a unique perspective on human experience, one marked by an understanding of hardship and an innate capacity for empathy. It was a silent, powerful teacher, shaping the boy who would one day become a voice for the shared sorrows and quiet joys of many. Hank Williams's early childhood unfolded against the vast, sombre backdrop of the Great Depression. While his family faced personal hardships, these were amplified and intensified by the broader economic catastrophe that gripped the United States throughout the 1930s. The Williams family, like millions of others, was caught in the pervasive shadow of scarcity and struggle that defined this era. For working-class families in the American South, the Depression meant an almost unimaginable level of deprivation. The rural economy, already fragile, crumbled under the weight of widespread unemployment, bank failures, and agricultural collapse. Cotton prices plummeted, and many small farmers lost their land. Steady work became a rare and precious commodity, often requiring immense physical labour for meagre wages. In communities like Georgiana, Alabama, where Hank spent his earliest years, the effects were palpable. Food was rationed not by decree, but by necessity. Families often subsisted on whatever they could grow, hunt, or gather. Clothing was mended until it could no longer hold together. Luxuries were non-existent, and even basic necessities were often out of reach. The constant worry about where the next meal would come from, or how to keep a roof over one's head, became a relentless, underlying hum in daily life. The Williams family was not exempt from these pervasive hardships. Hank's mother, Lily, a figure of remarkable resilience, was continually challenged to find ways to provide for her children. With Hank's father largely absent due to his declining health and institutionalization, Lily's resourcefulness became the family's primary bulwark against destitution. She took on any available work, from nursing to operating boarding houses, thus demonstrating an unwavering determination to keep her family afloat in an unforgiving economic climate. Children growing up during this period absorbed the lessons of scarcity deeply. They learned the value of every morsel of food, every scrap of fabric, and every hard-earned penny. There was an implicit understanding of the precariousness of existence, a quiet acceptance of hardship as an inescapable part of life. For Hank, this environment fostered a practical resilience, but also perhaps deepened that melancholic introspection observed earlier as the weight of the world pressed down on even the youngest shoulders. The Great Depression was more than an economic event. It was a societal crucible that forged a generation. It instilled a unique blend of toughness, pragmatism, and a profound appreciation for simple pleasures when they could be found. These formative experiences of widespread want and struggle would leave an indelible mark on Hank Williams, shaping his understanding of the human condition, and, by extension, the themes he would later explore in his music. The echoes of that scarcity would resonate throughout his life, even in moments of later success. With Lon Williams's continued hospitalization and the deepening economic despair of the Depression, the responsibility for the family's survival rested almost entirely upon Lily Williams's shoulders. Her determination in these trying times was a defining force in Hank's early life. Lily possessed a formidable will and an uncommon resourcefulness, which she channeled into a relentless effort to provide for her children. This often meant frequent relocation, a pattern that would characterize much of Hank's early years. Their initial moves were often within the immediate vicinity of Georgiana and the nearby town of Greenville, Alabama. Each shift was driven by Lily's pursuit of work, however temporary or meagre the wages. She moved her small family wherever an opportunity for income presented itself, whether it was taking in laundry, working as a seamstress, or performing various domestic tasks for other families. These were not moves born of ambition or desire for new scenery, but rather a stark necessity, a perpetual search for stability in an unstable world. One significant shift occurred when Lily began working as a nurse, a role that required her to be adaptable and often to live where the work was. This period saw them moving between different residences, sometimes living in rented rooms, sometimes in small, modest houses, each one a temporary haven in their itinerant existence. For young Hank, these frequent changes meant a lack of a settled home environment, a constant adjustment to new surroundings, new faces, and new schools. This transient childhood, while challenging, may have also subtly contributed to his later observational skills and his ability to connect with diverse individuals, as he was continually exposed to different facets of rural and small-town southern life. Eventually, Lily's endeavors led them to the larger city of Montgomery, Alabama, a move that represented a significant change from the rural landscapes of Hank's earliest memories. Montgomery offered a wider array of opportunities, and Lily, ever the entrepreneur, began to operate boarding houses. This was a demanding enterprise requiring constant attention to guests, cooking, cleaning, and managing finances, all while raising her children. In Montgomery, Lily's boarding houses became the family's primary source of income. These establishments, while providing a roof over their heads, were also bustling environments, often filled with an assortment of transient workers, musicians, and other individuals seeking lodging. For Hank, growing up in such a setting provided an early informal education in human nature. He observed a wide spectrum of personalities, heard countless stories, and was exposed to various forms of music that guests might bring with them. Lily's tireless efforts during these years were a testament to her unwavering commitment to her family. Her resilience in the face of such profound economic hardship and personal challenge was not merely survival, it was an active, persistent striving for a better life for her children, demonstrating a strength that profoundly shaped the young Hank Williams. Her moves were not retreats, but strategic advancements in a continuous battle against adversity. Amidst the backdrop of constant change and economic struggle, two powerful and distinct sources of music began to imprint themselves upon young Hank Williams: the fervent gospel hymns emanating from local churches and the diverse sounds filtering through the airwaves of the family radio. These early encounters with music were not merely casual listening, they were deeply resonant experiences that laid a foundational layer for his future artistic expression. Church, particularly in the rural South, was more than a place of worship. It was a central community gathering, a source of spiritual and social sustenance. For Hank, the sounds within these modest structures were often his first exposure to organized, communal singing. The music was typically unadorned, driven by voices and simple instrumentation, but imbued with profound emotion. The congregational singing of gospel hymns, with their themes of struggle, redemption, solace, and hope, resonated deeply. The call and response patterns, the soaring melodies, and the heartfelt expressions of faith were powerful. He heard tales of suffering and salvation, woven into the very fabric of the music, an emotional landscape that would later find echoes in his own compositions. The raw, unvarnished sincerity of these spiritual songs provided an early lesson in conveying deep feeling through melody and lyric. Simultaneously, the radio became a window to a broader world of sound. In an era before television, the radio was a vital link to entertainment and information, a magical box that brought voices and music from distant places directly into the home. For Hank, it was a source of endless fascination. He would sit and listen intently as the airwaves carried the emerging sounds of country music, then often referred to as hillbilly music, and the soulful strains of the blues. The country music he heard on the radio, with its stories of heartbreak, hard living, and everyday struggles, mirrored many of the experiences he witnessed or endured in his own life. The narrative quality of these songs, often telling complete stories within a few verses, provided a blueprint for his own songwriting. Simultaneously, the blues, with its deep emotional core, its themes of sorrow, longing, and resilience, offered another powerful avenue for expressing complex human feelings. The rhythmic structures, the vocal inflections, and the raw honesty of the blues were absorbed by him, even if unconsciously at first. These diverse sonic textures, both sacred and secular, both hopeful and melancholic, began to intertwine within his developing consciousness, shaping his innate musical understanding long before he ever picked up an instrument with serious intent. As Hank Williams entered his formative years, his innate connection to music deepened, and his mother, Lily, recognized this burgeoning interest. Despite their constrained circumstances, Lily possessed an astute understanding of her son's potential and a determination to foster it. It was through her perceptive encouragement that Hank was introduced to a figure who would become a crucial, if often understated, mentor, Rufus T. Tot Payne. T. Tot Payne was an African-American street musician in Montgomery, Alabama, a figure often found playing on street corners, in juke joints, or outside barbershops. He was a master of the guitar, proficient in the blues and an array of folk styles, his music a vibrant tapestry woven from the diverse cultural threads of the South. His performances were not merely entertainment, they were expressions of a rich oral tradition, imbued with rhythm, melody, and often poignant storytelling. Lily Williams, observing Hank's fascination with music and sensing his need for formal instruction, approached T-Tot. She arranged for Hank to receive lessons, often paying Payne with small sums of money, or at times with meals. These were not conventional structured music lessons in a formal setting. Instead, they were informal apprenticeships, taking place on front porches, in back alleys, or wherever T-Tot could comfortably play. Hank, still a young boy, would sit attentively, observing Payne's fingers on the fretboard, listening to the nuances of his phrasing, and absorbing the emotional weight of his delivery. T-Tot taught Hank the fundamental chords and progressions of the guitar, but his influence extended far beyond mere technical instruction. He immersed the young Hank in the rhythms and sensibilities of the blues. He demonstrated how to bend notes, how to use slides, and how to infuse a song with a particular feeling or mood. Payne's style was raw, authentic, and deeply soulful, characterized by a rhythmic precision and an expressive vocal delivery that left a lasting impression. The impact of T-Tot's mentorship on Hank Williams cannot be overstated. From Payne, Hank learned not just how to play the guitar, but how to feel the music, how to infuse it with personal experience and universal emotion. He absorbed the blues' characteristic melancholy, its sense of longing, and its narrative directness. These elements, combined with the gospel music he heard in church and the country tunes on the radio, began to coalesce within him, forming the bedrock of his unique musical language. T-Tot Payne provided a direct, personal link to a rich musical tradition, a gift that profoundly shaped the foundational sound of one of country music's most enduring voices. With the foundational lessons from Rufus T. Tott, Paine firmly established, Hank Williams embarked upon a path of self-directed study and relentless practice. His guitar became an extension of himself, a constant companion. He would spend countless hours with the instrument, meticulously practicing chords, scales, and the various finger-picking styles he had observed. This was not merely rote memorization. It was an immersive process of internalizing the music, allowing it to flow through him. His dedication was profound, driven by an innate passion and a quiet, burgeoning ambition. Beyond the guitar, Hank also devoted considerable attention to developing his vocal abilities. He listened intently to the singers on the radio, absorbing their phrasing, their emotional delivery, and their unique vocal textures. He would mimic their styles, then gradually begin to integrate these influences into a voice that was distinctly his own. His singing, even in these early stages, possessed a certain raw honesty, a quality that would later become a hallmark of his artistry. He learned to project his voice, to control its dynamics, and to imbue each lyric with genuine feeling. As his confidence grew, Hank began to seek opportunities to perform in public. These early performances were often informal and humble. He would frequently be found on street corners in Montgomery, guitar in hand, playing for passers-by. These impromptu concerts were crucial proving grounds. They taught him how to capture an audience's attention, how to hold it, and how to adapt his performance to the mood of the street. The small coins he earned provided not only a meagre income, but also tangible validation of his burgeoning talent. Local talent shows also became important venues for Hank to hone his craft. These were often community events, held in school auditoriums or local halls, where amateur performers would showcase their abilities. Participating in these shows allowed him to experience the dynamics of a more formal stage, however modest. He learned about stage presence, about connecting with an audience from a distance, and about managing the subtle anxieties that accompany public performance. Each appearance, whether successful or not, contributed to his growth as an entertainer. These early public appearances were instrumental in shaping Hank Williams beyond just his musical technique. They helped him to develop a rudimentary yet effective stage persona. He learned the power of a quiet gaze, the impact of a well-timed pause, and the art of conveying emotion through subtle gestures. The feedback, whether through applause or quiet observation, allowed him to refine his approach. Through these dedicated efforts on street corners and in local halls, Hank Williams was steadily, almost imperceptibly, building the foundation of a performance style that would one day captivate millions, transforming a quiet boy from rural Alabama into a commanding presence on the American musical landscape. As the 1930s drew to a close, Hank Williams entered his teenage years in Montgomery, Alabama, a city that offered more opportunities than the rural landscapes of his earlier childhood. During this period, his commitment to music deepened considerably, moving beyond a cherished pastime to become the central focus of his young life. The formal structures of schooling began to feel increasingly restrictive and irrelevant compared to the vibrant call of performing and creating music. It was during these years that Hank made a pivotal decision, one that marked a significant turning point in his early career. He chose to leave school. This was not a choice made lightly, but rather a reflection of his profound dedication to his musical aspirations. The classroom could no longer compete with the lessons learned on a stage or the satisfaction derived from crafting a melody. He recognized that the path to becoming a musician required an immersive commitment, one that extended beyond the conventional educational system. This early career choice, though unconventional for its time, underscored his unwavering conviction in his artistic direction. With school behind him, Hank was able to devote his full energy to playing music. His reputation began to grow steadily within the local Montgomery music scene. He was no longer just a boy with a guitar on a street corner. He was becoming a recognized presence in the various juke joints, honky-tonks, and local dance halls that dotted the city. These venues, often smoky and dimly lit, provided the perfect crucible for his talent. He played for diverse audiences, learning to gauge their moods and respond with the appropriate song. His performances during these Montgomery years were characterized by a blend of youthful energy and an emerging emotional depth. He played popular country tunes of the era, but also began to weave in his own compositions, songs that spoke of everyday struggles, of love and loss, themes that resonated deeply with the working-class audiences he entertained. His voice, still developing, carried a raw sincerity that was both captivating and authentic. He was observed to possess a natural charisma, an ability to connect with listeners on a personal level, even in the most boisterous of settings. This period was foundational. It allowed Hank to gain invaluable experience in front of live audiences, to understand the intricacies of leading a band, and to develop the stamina required for nightly performances. The Montgomery years were a time of intense learning and relentless pursuit, solidifying his identity as a musician and laying essential groundwork for the wider recognition that would eventually follow. He was, in essence, serving an apprenticeship in the demanding world of professional music, preparing himself for the grander stages that awaited him beyond the city limits. Having established himself as a solo performer in Montgomery, Hank Williams soon recognized the need for a more structured musical ensemble to expand his reach and refine his sound. Thus, in 1937, he formed his first professional band, which he christened Hank Williams and his Drifting Cowboys. This group, though its personnel would shift over the years, marked a significant step in his professional journey, transforming him from a local performer into the leader of a touring act. The early iteration of the Drifting Cowboys was a collection of young, aspiring musicians, drawn together by a shared passion for country music and the promise of a life on the road, however challenging. They comprised various combinations of guitarists, fiddlers, and bass players, each contributing to the evolving sound that would become characteristic of Williams's music. The formation of the band provided a more robust musical foundation, allowing for richer arrangements and a fuller sound that was essential for captivating audiences in larger venues. Their initial touring efforts were concentrated around the network of honky-tonks and juke joints scattered across Alabama and neighboring states. These establishments were often modest, sometimes rustic. They were places where working-class people gathered after long days of labor to socialize, dance, and forget their troubles. The challenges of this circuit were considerable. Travel was often arduous, undertaken in unreliable vehicles over unpaved roads. The distances between engagements could be significant, and the hours were long, often stretching late into the night. The pay for these performances was typically meagre, barely enough to cover gas, food, and the most basic accommodations. Musicians often slept in their cars or in cheap boarding houses, sharing rooms and making do with very little. There was no guaranteed income, and the success of a night's performance often depended on the generosity of the crowd or the honesty of the proprietor. Despite these hardships, a distinct camaraderie developed among the band members. They shared in the triumphs and tribulations, forming bonds forged in shared experiences on the road. This period was characterized by a relentless grind. The Drifting Cowboys performed night after night, week after week, honing their craft, tightening their arrangements, and learning to read an audience with precision. It was a demanding apprenticeship, teaching them resilience and adaptability. The experience of playing in countless small towns and rural communities allowed Hank Williams to connect directly with the heartland of America, absorbing its stories and its rhythms, which would later infuse his songwriting with unparalleled authenticity. the Drifting Cowboys were not merely a backing band. They were partners in a demanding formative journey. The musical landscape of the American South in the late 1930s and early 1940s was a vibrant and evolving tapestry of sounds. This pre-war era witnessed the widespread popularity of what was then broadly termed hillbilly music, a genre encompassing a diverse array of folk, string band, and vocal traditions rooted deeply in the region's Anglo-Celtic heritage. This music, often characterized by its narrative lyrics, acoustic instrumentation, and heartfelt vocal delivery, resonated strongly with rural and working-class audiences. Alongside hillbilly music, Western swing was also gaining significant traction. Originating in Texas and Oklahoma, Western swing was a lively fusion that blended traditional country instrumentation with elements of jazz, blues, and big band swing. Its rhythmic drive and sophisticated arrangements, often featuring steel guitar, horns, and a driving rhythm section, made it popular in dance halls and on radio airwaves. Artists like Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys exemplified this genre, demonstrating a more polished and dance-oriented approach to country sounds. Simultaneously, the blues continued its profound influence, particularly across the Deep South. From the raw, emotive field hollers and acoustic guitar work of the Delta blues to the more structured, urbanized sounds emerging from cities like Memphis and Chicago. The blues provided a powerful voice for hardship, resilience, and human experience. Its characteristic chord progressions, lyrical themes, and vocal inflections permeated many other musical forms, subtly shaping the trajectory of popular music. These genres were not isolated entities, but rather existed in a dynamic interplay, constantly influencing and borrowing from one another. Radio broadcasts, which had become ubiquitous even in remote areas, played a crucial role in disseminating these sounds, allowing diverse musical styles to cross regional boundaries and reach a wider audience. Local radio stations often featured live performances by regional bands, further cementing their popularity and reach. Within this rich and varied musical environment, Hank Williams began to carve out his own niche. He was a product of this confluence of styles, having absorbed the gospel harmonies of his youth, the blues phrasing taught by T-Top Payne, and the narrative traditions of hillbilly music. His performances with the Drifting Cowboys integrated elements from these diverse sources, creating a sound that was at once familiar to his audience and distinctively his own. He understood the emotional resonance of a simple melody and a direct lyric, a skill refined by countless hours spent observing and engaging with the audiences who frequented the honky-tonks. He was positioned at a pivotal moment, synthesizing the evolving sounds of the South into something new and deeply authentic. The outbreak of World War II profoundly altered the fabric of American society, and its effects rippled through the lives of individuals like Hank Williams, even those not directly on the front lines. While Williams himself was not called to serve in the armed forces, his physical condition, specifically his lifelong struggle with spina bifida occulta, rendered him medically ineligible for military duty. This exemption allowed him to continue his musical pursuits, yet the war still exerted a significant disruptive force on his burgeoning career. The most immediate and persistent challenge for Hank Williams and his Drifting Cowboys was the constant upheaval within the band's personnel. As the nation mobilized for war, countless young men, including many skilled musicians, were drafted into military service. This meant that members of the Drifting Cowboys were regularly leaving to fulfill their patriotic obligations. The stability that is often crucial for a developing musical act was consistently undermined. Williams found himself in a perpetual state of auditioning new players, attempting to integrate them into the band's sound and stage presence, only for another member to be called away weeks or months later. This revolving door of musicians made it exceedingly difficult for the drifting cowboys to build and maintain the cohesive sound and tight ensemble playing that marked successful touring bands of the era. Each new musician brought a different style, requiring adjustments and adaptations from the remaining members. The continuity of their performances, and indeed their overall artistic development, suffered under this relentless pressure. The early momentum that Williams had painstakingly built through years of playing honky-tonks and local venues was frequently interrupted. Beyond the personnel issues, the war economy also created new challenges and opportunities. While some aspects of entertainment thrived as people sought diversion, wartime restrictions on travel, gasoline rationing, and the general shift in national focus meant that the landscape for touring musicians was more complex. However, the presence of military bases across the South also created new audiences as servicemen sought entertainment during their downtime. Williams and his band would play for these audiences, providing a temporary escape and a connection to home for those preparing for deployment or returning from service. Thus, the war years became a period of both stagnation and subtle evolution for Hank Williams. He was unable to solidify his band or achieve significant national recognition, yet he continued to hone his craft, performing constantly and adapting to the ever-changing circumstances. The disruptions, while frustrating, forced a certain resilience and adaptability upon him, further shaping his understanding of performance and the profound connection music could forge during times of national uncertainty. Amidst the transient nature of his wartime musical endeavours, a pivotal figure entered Hank Williams's life, one who would irrevocably shape his personal and professional trajectory. This individual was Audrey Mae Shepherd. Their initial encounter occurred in the early 1940s, a period when Williams was performing in various venues across Alabama. Audrey, a spirited and ambitious young woman, was working in Montgomery when their paths crossed. The connection between them was immediate and intense, marked by a powerful mutual attraction that quickly developed into a profound bond. Audrey Mae Shepherd was not merely a romantic interest. She possessed a strong will and an unwavering ambition that, in many ways, mirrored and amplified Hank's own aspirations. She quickly recognized the raw talent and unique charisma that Williams possessed. While Hank was a gifted performer and songwriter, he often lacked the consistent drive for self-promotion and the strategic foresight necessary to navigate the competitive music industry. Audrey, by contrast, was a pragmatist with a keen eye for opportunity and a relentless desire for advancement. From the very beginning of their relationship, Audrey took an active and assertive role in managing aspects of Hank's career. She saw his potential not just as a local honky-tonk singer, but as a national star. Her influence was evident in her persistent efforts to secure better bookings, negotiate higher fees, and generally professionalize the image and operations of Hank Williams and his drifting cowboys. She would often handle correspondence, manage finances, and even participate in decision-making regarding the band's direction. Audrey's belief in Hank was unwavering, and she became a tireless advocate for his music. She encouraged him to write more, to refine his existing compositions, and to constantly strive for broader recognition. Her push was often direct and unyielding, born from a conviction that Hank's talent deserved a wider stage. This intensity, while sometimes leading to friction, was a significant force in propelling Williams forward during a period when many musicians struggled for consistent work. Her ambition was not solely for Hank. Audrey also harboured aspirations of becoming a performer herself. She frequently sought opportunities to sing alongside Hank, both on stage and in recordings. While her vocal talents were often a point of contention and discussion, her desire to be a part of his musical world was clear and persistent. This shared involvement in music, though sometimes fraught, further cemented their bond and intertwined their lives in a complex and enduring manner. The arrival of Audrey May Shepherd marked the beginning of a defining partnership that would profoundly influence the trajectory of Hank Williams's remarkable yet often tumultuous career. In the evolving landscape of regional entertainment, local radio stations served as indispensable platforms for musicians seeking to expand their reach beyond dance halls and juke joints. For Hank Williams, this crucial opportunity arrived in Montgomery, Alabama, through regular appearances on WSFA radio. His association with the station began in the mid-1940s, a period when the limitations imposed by the war were gradually receding, allowing for a renewed focus on musical careers. WSFA, a prominent local station in Montgomery, offered Williams a consistent, albeit modest, platform to broadcast his music to a wider audience. These radio spots were typically live performances, often brief, but they were invaluable. They allowed listeners across a broader geographic area within the station's broadcast range to become familiar with Hank Williams and his distinctive sound. This was a direct contrast to the transient nature of live performances in honky-tonks, where an audience was limited to those physically present. The importance of such early radio exposure for aspiring musicians cannot be overstated. Before the widespread availability of recorded music and national touring networks, local radio was the primary means by which an artist could cultivate a regional following. It allowed an artist to establish a consistent presence in the homes of potential fans, creating a sense of familiarity and connection. Listeners would tune in, often daily, to hear their favourite local acts, fostering a loyal base that would then attend live performances. For Hank Williams, these WSFA broadcasts were more than just airtime. They were a foundational stone in building his regional reputation. They provided an opportunity to hone his on-air presence, to test new songs, and to refine his delivery to suit the medium. The directness of radio, with its intimate connection to the listener, perfectly suited Williams's straightforward, emotionally resonant style. His voice, with its unique blend of rural authenticity and heartfelt expression, found a natural home on the airwaves. The consistent exposure on WSFA allowed Hank Williams to transcend the boundaries of local clubs and become a recognized name throughout central Alabama and parts of neighboring states. It was a crucial early milestone, transforming him from a talented local performer into a regional personality with a growing fan base. This foundational radio presence would prove instrumental in attracting the attention of larger record labels and talent scouts in the years to come, laying the groundwork for his eventual ascent to national prominence. The immediate post-war years, while signalling a return to a semblance of normalcy for many, presented a different set of challenges for musicians like Hank Williams. The disruptions of the war had certainly impacted his ability to maintain a consistent band, but the cessation of hostilities did not automatically open doors to widespread success. Instead, this period became a sustained struggle for broader recognition, characterized by persistent efforts to secure a recording contract, a pivotal step towards national visibility. Despite his growing regional popularity, fueled by consistent radio appearances and tireless live performances, the established music industry remained largely indifferent to Williams's talent. Nashville, the burgeoning centre of country music, was a formidable landscape, often resistant to embracing new sounds or unproven artists, particularly those from the more rural, less polished circuits. Industry executives and record label scouts frequently operated with a cautious perspective, seeking artists who fit established commercial molds or who presented a clear, immediate path to profitability. Hank Williams, with his raw, unvarnished style and intensely personal songwriting, did not always align neatly with these prevailing expectations. His music, though deeply authentic and emotionally resonant, was often perceived as too rustic or too unconventional by those accustomed to the more polished sounds that were then gaining traction. there was a palpable skepticism from some established figures who perhaps failed to grasp the profound connection Williams's music forged with his audience. They might have seen merely another regional performer, rather than a singular artistic voice destined for enduring influence. The process of securing a recording contract in this era was often arduous, requiring persistence, self-promotion, and a degree of fortunate timing. Musicians frequently faced numerous rejections, enduring the disheartening experience of having their artistic vision dismissed or undervalued. For Williams, these years were marked by a relentless pursuit of opportunities, with Audrey often taking the lead in making contacts and advocating for his material. She understood the necessity of a recording deal to elevate his career beyond regional confines, and was unyielding in her efforts. This period of struggle was not without its merits, however. It forced Williams to continually refine his craft, to strengthen his songwriting, and to deepen his connection with his live audiences. The challenges he faced in gaining industry acceptance undoubtedly contributed to the raw, resilient quality that would later define his most iconic work. The skepticism he encountered, rather than deterring him, perhaps only reinforced his conviction in the power and authenticity of his own musical expression, solidifying his resolve to break through the barriers of the established music world. Amidst the persistent efforts to gain a foothold in the competitive music industry, a pivotal figure emerged who would profoundly alter the trajectory of Hank Williams's career. This individual was Fred Rose, a renowned songwriter and producer whose influence on early country music was substantial and far-reaching. Rose possessed a keen ear for talent and an innate understanding of how to craft a song for commercial appeal, a skill honed through years of experience in various musical genres. Their fateful meeting, often recounted as a turning point, occurred through the persistent efforts of Audrey Williams and, significantly, the intercession of Wesley Rose, Fred's son and a rising talent agent. Fred Rose, initially skeptical of yet another aspiring country singer from Alabama, agreed to meet with Hank Williams. What transpired during that initial encounter, likely in a quiet Nashville office or recording studio, was a moment of profound recognition. Rose, despite his initial reservations, quickly perceived something unique and undeniable in Williams's voice, his presence, and especially in the raw, emotive power of his original songs. Rose understood that Williams possessed not just a compelling voice, but an extraordinary gift for lyrical expression, a directness and emotional honesty that transcended the often formulaic compositions of the era. He recognized the authenticity in Williams' delivery, a quality that resonated deeply with the experiences of a broad audience. This recognition was more than just an appreciation of talent. It was an insight into the potential for Williams's music to connect on a deeply human level. From that point forward, Fred Rose became far more than just a producer. He evolved into a central mentor figure for Hank Williams. He took on the crucial role of an editor, helping Williams to refine his compositions, to distill his often lengthy and rambling song ideas into concise, impactful narratives. And Rose possessed an uncanny ability to identify the core emotional story within Williams' raw material, and to shape it into a structure suitable for recording and radio play. He encouraged Williams to focus on clarity and universality, ensuring that the personal pain or joy expressed in a song could be understood and felt by anyone listening. Furthermore, Rose served as an indispensable gatekeeper to the Nashville music scene. His established reputation and connections opened doors that had previously remained closed to Williams. He facilitated recording opportunities, navigated the complexities of record labels, and championed Williams's music to skeptical industry executives. Without Rose's discerning eye, his patient guidance, and his strategic influence, Hank Williams' distinctive sound might have remained confined to regional stages, never reaching the vast audience that would ultimately embrace it. Their partnership would lay the groundwork for a musical legacy that would redefine country music. The foundational partnership with Fred Rose quickly yielded tangible results, moving Hank Williams from the realm of local radio and regional performances to the threshold of professional recording. In December of 1946, a significant milestone was reached with the signing of his first recording contract with Sterling Records. This agreement, while modest in its initial scope, represented a crucial step forward, validating years of persistent effort and marking Williams' formal entry into the national music industry. Sterling Records at that time was a small independent label, but it offered the opportunity Williams had long sought, a chance to commit his unique sound to wax. The initial recording sessions for Sterling Records took place in Nashville, a city that was steadily solidifying its reputation as the heart of country music. These sessions were meticulously overseen by Fred Rose, whose expertise was invaluable in translating Williams's raw talent into recorded tracks that possessed both artistic integrity and commercial potential. Among the early songs committed to record during these sessions were compositions that would later become touchstones in Williams's catalogue. Never Again Will I Knock on Your Door was one such piece, a poignant ballad that showcased Williams's emerging mastery of heartbreak and longing. Its melody was simple yet memorable, and the lyrical content, though direct, conveyed a universal sense of regret and resignation. This song, in its recorded form, began to hint at the profound emotional depth that would come to define much of his later work. Another significant recording from this period was Honky Tonkin. This track presented a different facet of Williams' artistry, capturing the lively, often raucous atmosphere of the rural dance halls and juke joints where he had honed his craft. Honky Tonkin was an upbeat, rhythmic number, embodying the spirit of Saturday night revelry and escape. It demonstrated Williams' ability to craft songs that were both deeply emotional and irresistibly catchy, appealing to a wide range of listeners. These early Sterling recordings, though not immediate commercial blockbusters, were instrumental in establishing Hank Williams's presence in the recording world. They provided tangible proof of his abilities as both a singer and a songwriter, allowing his music to reach beyond the confines of live performances and local radio broadcasts. This period represented a crucial apprenticeship in the studio, where Williams began to understand the nuances of recording and the process of transforming his personal expressions into widely distributable musical artifacts. The experience gained during these sessions with Sterling Records, under Fred Rose's careful guidance, prepared him for the greater successes that lay just ahead. The experience gained with Sterling Records, though foundational, was merely a prelude to a more substantial development in Hank Williams's nascent recording career. The limited resources and reach of an independent label like Sterling meant that the potential for widespread national recognition remained constrained. However, the quality of Williams's early recordings, coupled with Fred Rose's unwavering belief in his talent, soon attracted the attention of a much larger entity within the music industry. In 1947, a pivotal transition occurred. Hank Williams signed a recording contract with MGM Records. This move represented a significant escalation in his professional trajectory. MGM was not merely another record label, it was a major player in the entertainment world, a division of the powerful Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer film studio. Their resources, distribution networks, and marketing capabilities far surpassed those of any independent label. For Williams, this was more than just a new contract. It was a major breakthrough, signaling a profound shift in the scale of his potential audience and influence. The decision to move to MGM was a critical career choice, carefully orchestrated by Fred Rose. Rose understood that for Williams to transcend regional fame and achieve national stardom, he needed the backing of a label with significant infrastructure and promotional power. MGM offered precisely that. Their expansive reach meant that Williams' records could be distributed across the entire United States, making his music accessible to a far broader listenership than ever before. This was an essential step for an artist whose raw, authentic style was beginning to resonate with a growing segment of the American public. Signing with MGM Records marked the beginning of a new chapter for Hank Williams. It was a clear signal that the industry's gatekeepers were beginning to recognize the unique appeal of his artistry. The transition brought with it not only enhanced financial resources, but also increased visibility and credibility. No longer would his music be confined to regional markets or niche audiences. MGM had the power to place his songs on jukeboxes across the country, secure airplay on national radio stations, and promote him through various channels connected to their vast entertainment empire. This pivotal moment positioned Hank Williams for a level of success that had previously seemed unattainable. It provided the platform necessary for his distinctive voice and compelling songwriting to reach a truly national audience, setting the stage for the remarkable period of artistic and commercial achievement that would soon follow. The move to MGM was, in essence, the moment the quiet, intense musician from Alabama was truly introduced to America. With the backing of MGM Records, the stage was set for Hank Williams to release his first significant recording under their banner. That moment arrived in 1947 with the release of Move It On Over. This particular song quickly resonated with audiences, becoming his first major hit and marking a decisive turning point in his career. Its immediate popularity signaled that Williams was not merely a promising talent, but a rising star within the evolving landscape of country music. Move It On Over captured the essence of Williams's appeal, blending a driving rhythm with relatable, often humorous lyrical themes. The song's sound was characterized by an energetic honky-tonk feel, air-propelled by a strong guitar rhythm and a distinctive fiddle line. It possessed an infectious quality, encouraging listeners to tap their feet and perhaps even dance. This vibrant instrumentation created a backdrop for Williams's vocal delivery, which was both earnest and imbued with a playful swagger. Lyrically, Move It On Over explored themes of domestic discord and marital strife, presented with a light-hearted touch. The narrative centered on a man who, after returning home late, finds himself locked out by his wife, who demands that he move it on over and make room for her in their shared life. This scenario, while rooted in common experience, was delivered with a wit and charm that made it universally appealing. It spoke to the everyday challenges and comical misunderstandings that often arise in relationships, allowing listeners to connect with the song's narrative on a personal level. The immediate success of Move It On Over was not merely a matter of commercial sales. It solidified Hank Williams' identity as a distinctive voice in country music. It demonstrated his ability to craft songs that were both deeply personal and broadly resonant. The track's popularity established a template for many of his subsequent hits, showcasing his knack for combining compelling narratives with catchy melodies and a raw, authentic delivery. This song became a staple on jukeboxes and radio stations across the South and beyond, introducing his unique sound to a rapidly expanding fan base. Move It On Over effectively launched Hank Williams into a new phase of his career, confirming that the move to MGM had been a prescient decision. It was a tangible demonstration of his growing influence and marked the true beginning of his ascent toward legendary status in American music. Following the success of Move It On Over, Hank Williams found a crucial new platform for his burgeoning talent, the Louisiana Hayride. This popular live radio show, broadcast from Shreveport, Louisiana, became an indispensable launchpad for his career, providing him with consistent, wide-reaching exposure that significantly expanded his audience. Commencing his regular appearances in August of 1948, Williams quickly became a fixture on the programme, performing his growing repertoire of songs to an eager listening public. The Louisiana Hayride was not merely a local radio show, it was a major regional institution, a hub for country and western music that attracted talent from across the South. Its broadcasts reached homes throughout the Gulf South and into parts of the Midwest, effectively bypassing the limitations of local venues and bringing Williams' music directly into countless living rooms. This extensive reach was instrumental in transforming him from a regional sensation into a nationally recognized figure. Each appearance on the Hayride allowed Williams to showcase his unique vocal style and his compelling stage presence. He would perform his latest recordings, as well as fan favourites, often accompanied by his band, the Drifting Cowboys. The live nature of the broadcast meant that listeners experienced his music in a raw, unvarnished form, fostering a sense of authenticity and immediate connection. This direct engagement with the audience, albeit through the medium of radio, was vital in cultivating a loyal and rapidly expanding fan base. The consistent exposure on the Louisiana Hayride also provided Williams with invaluable experience in performing under pressure and adapting to the demands of a live broadcast. These weekly performances helped to refine his stagecraft and strengthen his connection with his material. The show served as a proving ground, allowing him to test new songs and gauge audience reactions in real time, albeit through the filter of fan mail and anecdotal reports. His tenure on the Louisiana Hayride solidified his reputation as a compelling performer and a prolific songwriter. It was during this period that his popularity surged, leading to increased record sales and a growing demand for his live performances. The Hayride became a stepping stone, preparing him for even larger stages and more profound recognition, effectively cementing his position as one of country music's most captivating new artists. The program provided the consistent visibility that propelled his career forward with undeniable momentum. As Hank Williams' star continued its ascent, propelled by his hit records and consistent presence on the Louisiana Hayride, a significant milestone appeared on his horizon. This was the invitation to join the cast of the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, Tennessee. For any aspiring country music artist, an Opry invitation represented the ultimate validation, the definitive signal of arrival within the genre. It was not merely a performance opportunity. It was an induction into the very heart of country music's establishment. The Grand Ole Opry, broadcast nationally from its historic home, was the genre's most revered stage. To be invited to perform there, and eventually to become a regular member, meant that an artist had achieved widespread recognition and had earned the respect of both industry peers and a vast audience. For Williams, this moment in 1949 marked his transition from a promising regional talent to a legitimate national star. His debut on the Opry stage on June 11, 1949 was a momentous occasion. The anticipation surrounding his appearance was palpable, reflecting the buzz his records had created. He performed Lovesick Blues, a song that had already garnered considerable popularity. The audience's reaction was immediate and overwhelmingly positive, demanding multiple encores. This enthusiastic reception underscored the power of his connection with listeners and confirmed his place among the Opry's elite. Joining the Grand Ole Opry brought with it a level of exposure that even the Louisiana Hayride could not match. The Opry's national radio broadcast, carried by WSM, reached millions of homes across the United States, providing Williams with an unparalleled platform. This regular appearance on such a prestigious show dramatically amplified his visibility, introducing his distinctive honky-tonk sound and heartfelt lyrics to an even broader demographic. The Opry invitation was more than a professional achievement, it was a cultural affirmation. It signified that Hank Williams, with his raw, authentic style, had been embraced by the very institution that defined country music's traditions. This milestone cemented his status, not just as a successful recording artist, but as a pivotal figure in the evolving landscape of American popular music. His presence on the Opry stage confirmed that a new voice had emerged, one that resonated deeply with the experiences and emotions of a vast audience. The evening of June 11th, 1949, represented a pivotal moment in the unfolding narrative of Hank Williams's life. It was on this date that he made his debut appearance on the hallowed stage of the Grand Ole Opry. The air inside the Ryman Auditorium was charged with a quiet anticipation as the audience awaited the performance of this rising star, whose records were already generating considerable buzz across the nation. For his inaugural Opry performance, Williams chose to sing Lovesick Blues. This song, a Tin Pan Alley standard from 1922, had been reimagined by Williams with his distinctive country inflection, transforming it into a vehicle for his raw, emotional delivery. As the first notes drifted through the auditorium, a hush fell over the crowd, quickly replaced by a wave of recognition and appreciation. What followed was an extraordinary demonstration of an artist connecting profoundly with his audience. The performance of Lovesick Blues was met with an immediate and thunderous ovation. The applause was sustained and insistent, an unambiguous demand for more. The Opry management, recognizing the unprecedented nature of the reaction, allowed Williams to return to the stage for multiple encores. This was a rare occurrence for a debut artist, especially on a show with such a tightly scheduled lineup. Each subsequent performance of the song was met with renewed enthusiasm, solidifying the impression that something truly special was unfolding. The impact of this single performance was immediate and profound. It was not merely a successful debut, it was a moment of immediate catapulting into superstardom. The national radio broadcast of the Grand Ole Opry meant that millions of listeners across the United States heard Williams' electrifying performance that night. The overwhelming audience reaction in the auditorium translated into an equally enthusiastic response from the radio audience, generating a surge in record sales and concert bookings. This Opry debut effectively transformed Hank Williams from a popular country singer into a national phenomenon. It solidified his image as a compelling and authentic voice, capable of captivating vast audiences with his singular blend of vulnerability and power. The immediate and widespread success of Lovesick Blues, following this performance, became a testament to the magnetic appeal he possessed, marking a definitive turning point in his career and firmly establishing him as one of the most significant figures in American music. The years spanning 1949 to 1951 represent an extraordinary period in the career of Hank Williams, often referred to as his golden era of songwriting. Following the breakthrough success of his Grand Ole Opry debut, Williams embarked upon a remarkably prolific and creatively fertile phase, producing a consistent string of hit singles that solidified his place in American music history. His output during these years was not merely abundant. It was characterized by a profound lyrical genius and an uncanny ability to craft melodies that resonated deeply with a vast audience. During this relatively brief but intensely productive span, Williams penned and recorded numerous songs that would become enduring classics. His ability to articulate universal human emotions with deceptive simplicity was unparalleled. He wrote of heartbreak, loneliness, faith, and the simple joys of a life, all infused with an authenticity that listeners found profoundly relatable. Each song seemed to capture a distinct facet of the human experience, delivered with an unmistakable voice that conveyed both vulnerability and a quiet strength. The consistent flow of hit singles during this period is remarkable. Songs such as Wedding Bells, Mind Your Own Business, You're Gonna Change, or I'm Gonna Leave, and My Bucket's Got a Hole in It, rapidly ascended the country music charts. These compositions showcased his versatility, moving effortlessly between upbeat honky-tonk anthems and more introspective ballads. His lyrical prowess lay in his directness, using plain language to convey complex feelings, often with a touch of wry humour or poignant resignation. Beyond the immediate commercial success, these songs demonstrated Williams's exceptional skill in crafting narratives within a 3-minute musical framework. He possessed an innate understanding of metre and rhyme, allowing his words to flow naturally over the melodies he conceived. His creative output during this time seemed almost effortless. Yet each song bore the unmistakable mark of a craftsman perfecting his art. This period was also characterized by a deepening of his artistic identity. While his early hits had established his sound, these years saw him refining and expanding upon it, cementing the stylistic elements that would define his legacy. The songs from 1949 to 1951 are not just a collection of popular tunes. They represent the core of his musical contribution, a testament to his incredible creative energy and his unique ability to translate personal experience into universally understood art. This sustained period of songwriting brilliance ensured that his influence would extend far beyond his own lifetime, shaping the trajectory of country music for generations to come. The enduring power of Hank Williams's songs resides not only in their memorable melodies, but also in their profound engagement with fundamental human experiences. Across his extensive catalogue, certain lyrical themes recur with striking consistency: the ache of a broken heart, the sting of infidelity, the persistent pang of longing, the internal battle of spiritual struggle, and a deep, often unfulfilled, yearning for redemption. These are not merely abstract concepts in his music. They are woven into the fabric of his narratives, reflecting both his personal journey and the universal condition of humanity. Heartache, in its myriad forms, is perhaps the most prominent theme. Williams's songs frequently explore the pain of lost love, the quiet desolation of separation, and the torment of unrequited affection. He articulated these feelings with a raw honesty that resonated deeply with listeners who had experienced similar emotional wounds. There is a palpable sense of vulnerability in his portrayal of a man grappling with sorrow, a vulnerability that transcended the specific circumstances of his own relationships to touch a broader emotional truth. Infidelity, both as a fear and a reality, also casts a long shadow over many of his compositions. These songs often convey the suspicion, betrayal, and the unravelling trust that accompanies such experiences. They speak to the fragility of human relationships and the difficulty of maintaining fidelity in the face of temptation or neglect. This theme often intertwines with a sense of resignation, acknowledging the imperfections and complexities inherent in romantic bonds. A persistent longing, either for a past love, for a better life, or for an elusive sense of peace, permeates his work. This yearning often manifests as a quiet melancholy, a recognition that complete satisfaction remains just out of reach. It speaks to a deep-seated human desire for connection and fulfillment, a desire that often goes unmet in the transient nature of life. Beyond earthly concerns, Williams's music frequently grappled with spiritual struggle. Songs of faith and doubt, of sin and salvation, form a significant part of his repertoire, particularly those released under his Luke the Drifter pseudonym. These compositions reveal an individual wrestling with moral choices, seeking solace and guidance in a higher power and confronting his own perceived failings. This spiritual introspection was a sincere reflection of his upbringing and his personal battles. Ultimately, many of his songs express a yearning for redemption, whether seeking forgiveness for past mistakes, hoping for a second chance in love, or striving for spiritual absolution. The desire for a return to grace is a powerful undercurrent. This longing for a renewed sense of worthiness and peace connects directly to the universal human impulse to overcome adversity and find meaning amidst life's trials. Through these recurring themes, Hank Williams created a body of work that continues to speak to the enduring complexities of the human heart and spirit. Hank Williams's indelible mark on country music is intrinsically linked to his mastery and popularization of the honky-tonk sound. This particular style, which had been evolving in roadside bars and dance halls across the American South, found its most potent and influential expression through Williams's recordings and performances. He did not invent honky-tonk, but he refined it, imbued it with an unmatched emotional depth, and brought it to a national audience. The characteristics of the honky-tonk sound were distinct and purposeful. Central to its texture was the wailing, often melancholic voice of the steel guitar, its glissandos and sustained notes capable of conveying profound sadness or spirited joy. The fiddle, another cornerstone, provided a bright, often agile counterpoint, weaving intricate melodies or driving the rhythm with its energetic bowing. Together, these instruments created a sonic landscape that was both plaintive and vibrant. Beneath these melodic elements lay a robust and unyielding rhythm section, or typically comprising an acoustic guitar for foundational chords and a bass for a steady, walking pulse. This rhythmic drive was essential, as honky-tonk music was fundamentally dance music, designed to propel patrons across a sawdust-covered floor. The beat was clear, unpretentious, and insistent, making it impossible for listeners to remain entirely still. Crucially, the honky-tonk sound was defined by its raw, emotional vocals. Hank Williams's voice, with its distinctive drawl and inherent vulnerability, became the epitome of this style. He sang with an authenticity that bypassed artifice, directly communicating tales of love, loss, and hardship. His delivery was not always polished in a conventional sense, but it was always deeply felt, conveying a sense of shared experience with his audience, and this particular blend of instrumentation and vocal delivery resonated profoundly with post-war working-class audiences. As America transitioned from wartime austerity to a period of burgeoning prosperity, many found themselves navigating new social landscapes. Honky-tonk music, with its themes of everyday struggles, its unapologetic embrace of simple pleasures, and its accessible emotional directness, provided a sonic reflection of their lives. It was music for the common person, played in common places, speaking to common joys and sorrows. Hank Williams became the voice of this experience, solidifying the honky-tonk sound as a powerful and enduring force in American popular music. As Hank Williams's career ascended during this prolific period, Audrey Williams, his wife, remained a consistently influential figure, deeply embedded in the day-to-day operations of his burgeoning enterprise. Her role extended far beyond that of a mere spouse. She was an active participant, a driving force, and often a formidable presence in the management of his affairs. Audrey possessed a keen business acumen and an assertive personality that she frequently brought to bear on Hank's professional life. She was not content to remain in the background, but rather sought to actively shape his career trajectory. This involvement manifested in various ways, from negotiating performance fees to overseeing travel arrangements and managing the financial aspects of his touring schedule. Her dedication to maximizing Hank's earnings and opportunities was unwavering, often leading her to be a tenacious advocate for his interests. Her presence was a constant on the road and in the studios. She would often accompany Hank, observing every detail of his performances and interactions. This hands-on approach, while beneficial in some respects, also contributed to a complex dynamic within the Drifting Cowboys band and with other figures in Hank's professional circle. Audrey's relationship with the band members, in particular, was frequently contentious. Her assertive nature and direct involvement in financial matters, such as demanding larger shares of performance fees or scrutinizing expenses, sometimes created friction. The musicians, who often felt undervalued or micromanaged, occasionally chafed under her oversight. While she believed she was protecting Hank's interests and ensuring fair compensation, her methods could be perceived as overbearing or confrontational by others involved. Similarly, her interactions with management, including figures like Fred Rose, could be strained. Audrey was unafraid to voice her opinions or challenge decisions she felt were not advantageous to Hank. While Fred Rose respected her dedication and recognized her value as a fierce protector of Hank's career, their working relationship was not always smooth. She was a woman who knew her mind and was prepared to assert herself in a male-dominated industry, a characteristic that both aided and complicated Hank's professional journey. Her active participation, while sometimes creating tension, also provided a layer of protection and advocacy for Hank, especially as his fame grew and the demands on his time and talent intensified. Audrey's unwavering commitment to his success was a defining feature of this era, solidifying her position as an indispensable, albeit sometimes challenging, co-pilot in his meteoric rise. Amidst the whirl of burgeoning fame and the intricate dynamics of his professional and personal life, a significant event unfolded in Hank Williams's existence, the birth of his son. On May 26, 1949, Randall Hank Williams, who would later become known to the world as Hank Williams Jr., entered the world. This arrival brought a brief but discernible period of joy and a renewed sense of hope to the often tumultuous relationship between Hank and Audrey. The birth of a child can frequently reorient priorities and soften hardened edges, and for a time it seemed to do so for the Williams family. The presence of their infant son offered a shared focus, a tangible symbol of their union and a glimpse of a more conventional domestic life that had often eluded them. For Hank, holding his son represented a profound connection, a continuation of his lineage, and perhaps a quiet aspiration for stability that his own childhood had largely lacked. However, the fleeting moments of domestic tranquility were soon overshadowed by the relentless demands of Hank's escalating career. By 1949, Hank Williams was no longer a regional talent. He was a national sensation, a name whispered and sung in homes across America. This ascent brought with it an unyielding schedule of touring, recording, and public appearances that pulled him away from home for extended periods. The pressures of fatherhood, therefore, became intertwined with the intense pressures of being a rising star. The ideal of a stable family life, briefly illuminated by his son's birth, began to recede as the road called with increasing insistence. The responsibilities of providing for his family were immense, yet the very means by which he provided, the constant travel and public performance, simultaneously created distance. This paradox was a significant challenge. Hank's commitment to his art and his audience was absolute, but it often came at the expense of consistent domestic presence. For Audrey, the arrival of their son brought new responsibilities as well, often leaving her to manage the household and care for Randall Hank largely on her own while Hank was away. This situation, while common for the wives of touring musicians, undoubtedly added to the existing stresses within their marriage. The hope that Randall Hank's birth might solidify their bond and bring lasting peace proved to be an elusive one, a fragile moment of calm before the currents of fame and personal struggles once again intensified their flow. The presence of his son became another facet of Hank's complex life, a silent testament to the responsibilities and joys that coexisted with his artistic genius and personal turmoil. The relationship between Hank and Audrey Williams was a complex tapestry woven with threads of intense affection and profound strife. Their connection, while deeply passionate, was also marked by a consistent undercurrent of volatility. As Hank's fame grew, so too did the pressures on their marriage, exacerbating existing tensions and introducing new challenges. The domestic sphere for the Williamses was rarely a place of sustained peace. Arguments were frequent, often fueled by Audrey's assertive personality and Hank's increasingly erratic behaviour. These disagreements could be fierce, characterised by strong emotions and sharp words, creating an atmosphere of intermittent calm punctuated by dramatic outbursts. Their love, though evident, was often expressed through this dramatic dynamic, where reconciliation frequently followed periods of intense conflict. The very nature of their personalities contributed to this recurring pattern. Audrey possessed a keen business sense and a strong desire to be involved in Hank's career, sometimes to the point of overriding his band members or management, as noted previously. Hank, on the other hand, while deeply devoted to his music, thus struggled with the demands of conventional domesticity and the pressures of his public life. His discomfort with sustained stability, perhaps rooted in his transient childhood and chronic pain, often manifested in behaviours that further strained their bond. Separations became a recurring motif in their marital narrative. These were not always final partings, but rather temporary retreats, often followed by periods of reconciliation where both parties seemed to genuinely desire a renewed connection. Each separation and subsequent reunion added another layer to the intricate history they shared, reinforcing the cycle of intense feeling, disagreement, and eventual return. Their bond, for all its difficulties, possessed a magnetic quality that drew them back together, despite the evident pain involved. It is impossible to discuss the turmoil within their marriage without acknowledging its profound influence on Hank Williams' songwriting. His music, celebrated for its raw honesty and emotional depth, frequently drew from the wellspring of his personal experiences. The heartache, longing, regret, and fleeting moments of joy he expressed in his lyrics often mirrored the very emotions he experienced within his relationship with Audrey. Songs of infidelity, reconciliation, and the pain of separation found their resonance in the lived realities of their union. The poignant narratives of love lost and found, of promises broken and renewed, were not merely artistic fabrications but echoes of a deeply felt personal saga. The emotional landscape of their marriage provided a rich, if sometimes painful, and source material for his timeless compositions. The struggles within their home undoubtedly contributed to the authenticity and universal appeal of his music, allowing listeners to connect with the raw human emotion poured into every note and lyric, recognizing fragments of their own experiences within his art. The ascent to national stardom brought with it an unrelenting schedule that placed immense strain on Hank Williams. The demands of constant touring and performing at the peak of his fame were grueling, a ceaseless cycle of travel, performance, and brief, often insufficient rest. For an artist whose work was so deeply personal and emotionally resonant, this relentless pace began to extract a heavy toll. Life on the road in the late 1940s and early 1950s was physically taxing. Long drives in uncomfortable vehicles, often over poorly maintained roads, were common. Sleep was frequently interrupted, snatched in hotel rooms that offered little solace or consistency. The luxury of a settled routine, a consistent diet, or a full night's rest became increasingly rare commodities. Each town brought a new venue, a new audience, and the expectation of delivering an exceptional performance night after night. Beyond the physical discomfort, there was a profound mental burden. The pressure to consistently deliver was immense. Audiences expected the charismatic, emotionally resonant performer they heard on the radio, and Hank felt a deep responsibility to meet those expectations. This required a constant expenditure of emotional and creative energy, leaving little room for personal recuperation. The quiet introspection that had once fueled his songwriting became harder to access amidst the clamour of constant travel and public appearances. The lack of consistent rest exacerbated his pre-existing health issues, particularly the chronic pain associated with his spina bifida occulta. The physical demands of performing standing under hot lights and projecting his voice night after night intensified his discomfort. What might have been manageable pain under less strenuous circumstances became a persistent, debilitating companion on the road. Furthermore, the isolation of constant travel, despite being surrounded by his band, could be profound. The transient nature of touring meant fleeting connections and a constant disconnect from the stability of home life, which, tumultuous as it was, still represented a personal anchor. The line between his public persona and his private self began to blur under this relentless pressure, making it increasingly difficult to find moments of genuine quietude or self-reflection. The demands of stardom were not merely about performing. They encompassed a complete reordering of his existence, pushing him to his physical and emotional limits in ways that would ultimately prove unsustainable. Amidst the relentless pace of his career and the persistent discomfort of his physical ailments, a new, more insidious pattern began to emerge in Hank Williams's life. His struggles with alcohol and prescription painkillers, which had perhaps begun subtly, gradually intensified, moving from occasional use to a more entrenched dependency. This was not a sudden descent, but rather a slow, almost imperceptible drift, yet as fueled by a complex interplay of factors. The chronic back pain, a constant companion since birth due to his spina bifida occulta, played a significant role. The grueling demands of touring, with long hours of travel and strenuous performances, exacerbated this underlying condition. Medical science in the mid-20th century offered limited effective solutions for chronic pain management, and the options available often involved potent medications. For Hank, these substances, initially prescribed to alleviate his suffering, became a primary means of coping. Alcohol, too, offered a temporary escape from both physical discomfort and the immense pressures of his public and private life. It provided a fleeting sense of relief, a numbing effect that could dull the sharp edges of pain, anxiety, and the emotional turmoil of his tumultuous marriage. In the transient world of honky-tonks and late-night performances, where alcohol was readily available and often an accepted part of the culture, its use could easily escalate without immediate alarm. The self-medication that began as a means to manage legitimate pain and stress slowly spiraled beyond his control. The body's increasing tolerance meant that more of the substance was required to achieve the same effect, leading to a dangerous cycle. What started as a pragmatic solution to a deeply uncomfortable reality gradually transformed into a dependency, an addiction that began to exert its own powerful influence over his decisions and his well-being. This was not a moral failing, but a tragic consequence of untreated pain and the immense pressures of his circumstances. The subtle shifts from use to reliance, and then to addiction, often go unnoticed in their early stages, particularly when the initial motivation is rooted in genuine suffering. For Hank Williams, this gradual entanglement with alcohol and painkillers would cast a long shadow over the remainder of his life, profoundly impacting his health, his relationships, and ultimately his extraordinary career. In the midst of his soaring fame and increasing personal turmoil, Hank Williams embarked upon a unique artistic endeavour, one that allowed him to explore a different facet of his creative and spiritual self. This was the birth of Luke the Drifter, a pseudonym under which he released a series of spoken-word recordings. These were not the vibrant honky-tonk anthems for which he was known, but rather quiet, moralistic narratives, often accompanied by sparse musical backing. The adoption of this distinct persona served multiple purposes. While Hank Williams was the rambunctious, heartbroken troubadour, Luke the Drifter was a more reflective, introspective character, a wandering sage offering homespun wisdom and cautionary tales. One primary reason for the pseudonym was a concern that these overtly moralistic and often somber recitations might alienate his established audience, who expected spirited country tunes. The record label, MGM, also shared this apprehension, fearing that such a departure could confuse listeners or dilute the Hank Williams brand. Yet, beyond commercial considerations, the Luke the Drifter recordings provided an essential outlet for Hank's deeper spiritual and philosophical struggles. These spoken-word pieces often explored themes of sin and redemption, the pitfalls of earthly temptations, and the enduring search for meaning. Titles such as Ramblin' Man, Pictures from Life's Other Side, and Be Careful of Stones That You Throw offered reflections on human frailty, the consequences of actions, and the importance of compassion. These recordings reveal a profound internal dialogue within Williams, a man who, despite his public image and private struggles, possessed a deep, often conflicted religious sensibility. They suggest a yearning for spiritual understanding and a desire to impart lessons he himself was perhaps struggling to embody. The quiet, almost confessional tone of Luke the Drifter stood in stark contrast to the boisterous energy of Hank Williams's stage performances, offering a glimpse into the thoughtful, sometimes melancholic core of his being. The creation of Luke the Drifter was an attempt to reconcile the sacred and the profane within himself, to give voice to the moral compass that still guided him, even as his personal life became increasingly entangled in destructive patterns. It was an acknowledgement of the inner conflicts he faced, a public expression of his grappling with faith, morality, and the human condition, delivered not through song, but through the direct, unadorned power of the spoken word. These recordings remain a testament to the complex layers of Hank Williams's artistry and his enduring quest for meaning. Even as the complexities of his personal life deepened, Hank Williams reached an extraordinary creative zenith, producing a remarkable string of songs that would forever define his legacy and shape the landscape of popular music. This period saw the creation of some of his most enduring and beloved compositions, each a testament to his unparalleled ability to distill profound human experience into simple, resonant verse. Among these masterpieces stands Your Cheatin' Heart, a song that has transcended its country origins to become a universal anthem of betrayal and heartbreak. Penned in 1952, its poignant lyrics speak directly to the pain of infidelity, while its melody possesses a timeless quality that allows it to resonate across generations. The song's enduring appeal lies in its raw honesty and its direct articulation of a universally understood emotional wound. It is a lament, yet also a powerful expression of resilience in the face of deceit. And in contrast to the mournful introspection of Your Cheatin' Heart, Williams also crafted songs of pure joy and playful flirtation during this prolific time. Hey, Good Lookin', released in 1951, is a vibrant, upbeat invitation to romance, brimming with youthful exuberance and an infectious rhythm. Its simple, direct lyrics and catchy melody made it an instant classic, showcasing Williams's versatility and his ability to capture the lighter side of human interaction with equal brilliance. The song's optimistic spirit offered a counterpoint to the more somber themes found elsewhere in his catalogue. Another iconic creation from this era was Jambalaya on the Bayou, also released in 1952. This song celebrated Cajun culture with a lively festive spirit, transporting listeners to the bayous of Louisiana with its evocative imagery and infectious, danceable rhythm. While not directly autobiographical, Jambalaya demonstrated Williams's keen ear for regional sounds, and his talent for crafting narratives that felt authentic and universally appealing. Its cheerful disposition and memorable chorus ensured its widespread popularity and lasting cultural impact. The lyrical brilliance of these songs and many others from this period lies in their deceptive simplicity. Williams possessed an extraordinary gift for using plain language to convey complex emotions and vivid scenes. His melodies were often straightforward, yet instantly memorable, serving as perfect vehicles for his heartfelt lyrics. This combination allowed his songs to penetrate deeply into the hearts of listeners, of forging a connection that has endured for decades. These compositions solidified his status not merely as a country singer, but as a true American poet, whose work continues to speak to the fundamental joys and sorrows of human existence. The latter years of Hank Williams's life were marked by a relentless and tragic decline in his physical well-being, a deterioration that unfolded as a complex interplay of chronic conditions and self-destructive habits. His struggles with alcohol abuse and an escalating dependence on powerful painkillers became inextricably linked to the congenital spinal condition that had plagued him since birth. This combination forged a vicious cycle, each element exacerbating the others, leading him further into a state of profound physical and mental exhaustion. His spina bifida occulta, a condition often characterized by persistent back pain, became an increasingly prominent and debilitating factor. The constant grinding discomfort it caused was a daily presence, a physical burden that no amount of fame or artistic success could alleviate. In an era with limited understanding of chronic pain management and even fewer effective treatments, Williams resorted to the most accessible, albeit destructive, forms of relief. Alcohol, initially perhaps a social lubricant or a means to unwind from the pressures of performance, gradually transformed into a primary analgesic. Its temporary numbing effect offered a fleeting escape from the relentless ache in his back and the emotional tolls of his demanding life. Yet, as is often the case, the temporary relief gave way to deeper problems, compromising his judgment, his health, and his relationships. Simultaneously, his reliance on prescription painkillers intensified. These powerful substances, intended to mitigate severe pain, instead contributed to a growing physical and psychological dependency. The dosages required to achieve relief often increased, leading to a state where his body became accustomed to their presence, and withdrawal became an agonizing prospect. The very substances meant to alleviate suffering became a new source of torment, trapping him in a desperate search for the next dose. This intertwining of physical pain, alcohol dependency, and drug addiction created a downward spiral that became increasingly difficult to escape. The pain from his spina bifida drove him to seek solace in substances, which in turn impaired his physical health, weakened his resolve, and exacerbated his underlying medical issues. His liver and kidneys, already under strain, suffered further damage, while his overall constitution grew weaker. Each attempt to find relief only tightened the grip of his afflictions, leading to a relentless decline that shadowed his final years. His once vibrant energy was slowly consumed by this relentless battle against his own body and the substances he used to quiet its cries. The increasing severity of Hank Williams's addictions began to cast a long, dark shadow over his once stellar professional career. The dependable showman who had captivated audiences across the nation gradually became an unreliable figure, his commitments often overshadowed by the demands of his dependencies. This shift in his professional conduct led to a cascade of difficult consequences, one impacting not only his own reputation, but also the livelihoods and patience of those around him. Instances of missed performances grew more frequent, transforming what had once been an occasional oversight into a pattern of concern. Promoters, who had invested considerable resources in booking the celebrated star, found themselves grappling with the unpredictable nature of his appearances. Venues were left with empty stages, disappointed crowds, and significant financial losses, fostering a growing sense of frustration and disillusionment within the industry. The once eager invitations began to wane, replaced by hesitant inquiries and a cautious approach to future engagements. His behaviour, when he did appear, often became erratic and unpredictable. Performances could range from moments of his undeniable brilliance to disjointed, slurred renditions far removed from the polished artistry expected of him. This inconsistency was distressing for both his loyal fans and, perhaps even more acutely, for his band members, the drifting cowboys. They were often left in precarious positions, attempting to cover for their leaders' lapses, improvising to fill gaps, or facing the uncomfortable reality of a show cut short or cancelled at the last minute. The growing frustration among his bandmates was palpable. They were professional musicians reliant on the income from these engagements, and Williams's unreliability directly impacted their financial stability and professional standing. The dynamic within the band shifted from camaraderie to a strained tolerance, as they witnessed firsthand the destructive path their friend and leader was treading. Their loyalty was tested, and the shared joy of making music together was increasingly overshadowed by anxiety and uncertainty. Promoters, once thrilled to secure Hank Williams for their events, found themselves in increasingly difficult positions. The financial risks associated with his bookings became too significant for many to bear. Cancellations and no-shows led to not only monetary losses, but also damage to their own reputations within the music circuit. The industry, which had once embraced him with open arms, began to view him with a mixture of concern, disappointment, and a pragmatic assessment of his diminishing reliability. This erosion of trust marked a tragic turning point in his professional trajectory. The mounting issues surrounding Hank Williams's professional reliability reached a critical point in August of 1952. The revered stage of the Grand Ole Opry, the very place where his national stardom had been cemented, was forced to make a painful and public decision regarding his employment. The management of the Opry, after enduring a sustained period of missed appearances, erratic behaviour, and an inability to fulfil his commitments, made the difficult choice to terminate his contract. This was not a decision taken lightly. The Opry had a long-standing history of supporting its artists and nurturing talent, but its reputation and operational integrity depended on a certain level of professionalism and dependability. Hank Williams's repeated absences and his increasingly evident struggles with alcohol had become a significant detriment to the show's consistent scheduling and the audience's trust. The institution felt it had exhausted all avenues of support and intervention, leaving them with no alternative but to sever ties. The announcement of his firing from the Grand Ole Opry was a profound public humiliation for Williams. For an artist whose identity was so intertwined with the very fabric of country music and its most prestigious stage, this dismissal was a devastating blow. It signalled, unequivocally, that his personal struggles had now undeniably impacted his ability to function within the highest echelons of his profession. The news spread quickly throughout the country music community and beyond, confirming what many had privately suspected or witnessed. This public censure served as a stark indicator of his professional decline. The Opry's decision, while painful, underscored the severity of his situation and the extent to which his addictions had eroded his standing. It was a formal acknowledgement by the industry's most respected institution that his reliability had become untenable. For an artist who had once commanded such immense respect and adoration, being cast out from the Opry represented a significant loss of face and a severe setback to his career momentum. The dismissal was more than just the loss of a regular performance slot. It was a symbolic stripping away of status. The Opry had been a cornerstone of his success, a platform from which his voice had reached millions. To be removed from this hallowed stage was to lose a vital connection to his audience and a significant pillar of his professional identity. It was a public declaration that, despite his immense talent and prior contributions, his current conduct rendered him unsuitable for the rigorous demands of such a revered institution. The tumultuous relationship between Hank Williams and Audrey, his first wife, reached its definitive end in 1952. Their marriage, a volatile blend of deep affection, shared ambition, and explosive conflict, had been in a state of disrepair for a considerable period. The final dissolution of their union was not a quiet parting, but an acrimonious and deeply painful event for both individuals, further fracturing the already fragile landscape of Hank's personal life. The legal proceedings were fraught with tension and mutual recrimination. Years of unresolved arguments, Audrey's fervent desire to participate in his career, and Hank's escalating dependencies had created an irreparable chasm between them. The divorce was finalized, bringing an official end to a partnership that had produced both a child, Randall Hank Williams, and some of the most emotionally resonant music of the era. The formal separation, however, did little to soothe the deep wounds inflicted over years of marital strife. For Hank, the finality of the divorce from Audrey, a woman with whom he had shared so much of his formative professional and personal life, was profoundly destabilizing. Despite the incessant arguments and periods of separation, Audrey had been a constant, albeit challenging, presence. Her departure from his life in this definitive manner removed a significant anchor, however frayed it had become. The emotional toll was immense, contributing to an already pervasive sense of loss and isolation. The end of this central relationship seemed to strip away another layer of his resistance to his own destructive impulses. Without Audrey, who, despite her own complexities, had at times attempted to manage his affairs and his behaviour, Hank's descent into despair accelerated. The emotional void left by the divorce, coupled with the public humiliation of his Opry firing, compounded his existing struggles. He appeared to retreat further into his addictions, finding solace in alcohol and painkillers, rather than confronting the profound emptiness that now characterized his personal world. Audrey, too, experienced significant emotional distress from the final split. Her hopes for a shared life and career, however unrealistic they may have become, were definitively dashed. The end of their marriage marked the conclusion of an intensely lived chapter, leaving her to navigate her own future and the upbringing of their son without the man who had been the epicenter of her adult life for so long. The acrimony of the divorce left lasting scars on both parties, demonstrating the powerful, albeit destructive, bond they had shared. For Hank, it was a further catalyst into a deeper abyss of self-destruction, removing one of the last remaining connections to a semblance of stability. Following his dismissal from the Grand Ole Opry and the finality of his divorce from Audrey, Hank Williams found himself in a precarious position. His once unassailable career seemed to be unravelling, and the grand stages of Nashville were no longer open to him. In an effort to regain some semblance of professional stability, he turned to a familiar environment, the Louisiana hayride. This move represented a poignant attempt to rebuild what had been lost, seeking refuge in a place where he had once thrived and where his struggles might be met with greater understanding. The Louisiana hayride, based in Shreveport, Louisiana, had been an important stepping stone in Hank's early career, long before his national breakthrough. It was a regional show with a dedicated audience, known for its nurturing atmosphere for country and western artists. Returning to this stage in the latter half of 1952 was, in many ways, a retreat from the harsh glare of national stardom. It was a conscious step back from the demanding expectations of the Opry and the broader music industry that had, in recent times, found him wanting, the environment of the hayride was indeed more forgiving. The producers and fellow musicians there had witnessed his ascent and understood the complexities of his artistry and his personal demons more intimately than the detached executives in Nashville. Here, he was still Hank Williams, the immensely talented songwriter and performer, even as his reliability waned. The audiences, too, greeted him with a warmth born of long-standing admiration, less critical of his occasional lapses than the crowds in grander venues. This return, however, underscored the significant decline in his professional standing. From headlining the most prestigious country music show in the nation, Hank was now performing on a regional program, albeit a respected one. It was a stark reminder that his erratic behavior and persistent battles with addiction had cost him dearly. The move symbolized a regression, a retreat from the zenith of his career to a place that once served as a launch pad. While it offered a temporary respite and a chance to continue performing, it simultaneously highlighted the profound professional consequences of his deteriorating health and personal life. The Louisiana hayride provided a stage, but it could not fully restore the luster that had been tarnished by his recent public and private struggles. Amidst the professional setbacks and the lingering pain of his divorce, Hank Williams sought solace in a renewed sense of belonging. His life had become increasingly tumultuous, marked by instability and a profound sense of isolation. It was during this period that he met Billie Jean Jones Eschliman, a young woman from Bossier City, Louisiana. Their encounter led quickly to a decision to marry, a union that would prove to be brief and in its timing and circumstances rather controversial. Their wedding took place on October 18, 1952, a mere 2 months after his divorce from Audrey had been finalized. The speed of this new marriage, following such a public and acrimonious separation, raised eyebrows among those who knew him and observed his life. It was not a quiet affair. Hank, ever the showman, arranged for 2 public ceremonies at the New Orleans Municipal Auditorium. One was a private event for family and friends, and the other, a larger spectacle, was performed on stage before a paying audience. This unusual public display of matrimony, complete with musical performances, reflected a blend of his innate theatricality and perhaps a desperate attempt to project an image of happiness and normalcy, both to himself and to the world. The timing of this marriage, so close to the final dissolution of his previous one, suggested a deep-seated need within Hank for companionship and a desire to anchor himself in a stable relationship. His life had been a whirlwind of touring, performance, and personal struggles, often leaving him feeling adrift. The end of his marriage to Audrey, despite its difficulties, had severed a long-standing emotional connection, leaving a void that he seemingly sought to fill with urgency. Billie Jean, in this context, represented a potential new beginning, a promise of domesticity and support at a time when his personal world was crumbling. However, the circumstances surrounding the marriage to Billie Jean were not without complications. Legal questions soon arose regarding the validity of her own prior divorce, casting a shadow over the legitimacy of their union in the eyes of some. These issues further compounded the instability that already plagued Hank's life, adding another layer of complexity to his final months. Despite these concerns, the marriage proceeded, driven by Hank's evident longing for a partner and a sense of belonging. It was a testament to his persistent search for emotional security, a quest that continued even as his physical and professional health deteriorated, a poignant attempt to find solace in human connection during a period of profound personal decline. As the year 1952 drew to a close, Hank Williams continued to record, despite the increasing fragility of his health and the persistent unraveling of his personal life. These final recording sessions, held in the familiar environment of a studio, captured more than just songs. They preserved a poignant sonic testament to his rapidly declining physical and emotional state. The recordings from this period, particularly those made in the autumn of 1952, reveal subtle yet discernible shifts in his vocal quality and overall performance. One might discern a certain weariness in his delivery, a slight huskiness that had not been as prominent in earlier, more robust recordings. The characteristic clarity and power of his voice, while still present, at times seemed to possess a fragile edge, as if the effort required to produce those resonant tones was becoming more taxing. The emotional depth, while always a hallmark of his artistry, remained profound, yet it was now imbued with an additional layer of sorrow, a palpable sense of exhaustion that permeated the very fabric of his singing. His phrasing, once so effortlessly fluid, occasionally exhibited a more deliberate pace, a subtle hesitation that hinted at the toll his various afflictions were taking. The raw, unvarnished emotion that poured from him was still compelling, but it was often accompanied by an underlying vulnerability, a quiet fragility that could be perceived in the nuanced inflections of his voice. These were not the performances of a man at the peak of his physical prowess, but rather those of an artist grappling with profound internal struggles, channeling his pain directly into his musical expression. His songs recorded during this twilight period of his career offer a somber yet invaluable glimpse into his inner world. They stand as a testament to his enduring commitment to his craft, even as his body and spirit were succumbing to overwhelming pressures. The finality of these recordings, viewed in retrospect, lends them a particularly melancholic quality. Each note, each word sung, seems to carry the weight of his personal journey, echoing the profound sorrow and the quiet resignation that marked his final months. These sessions, though touched by decline, ultimately underscore the unwavering power of his artistic spirit, shining through even in moments of profound vulnerability. The final months of 1952 enveloped Hank Williams in a deepening spiral of ill health and increasing isolation. With each passing week, the vibrant energy that had once defined his stage presence and personal interaction seemed to wane, replaced by a profound weariness. The relentless pain from his spina bifida, exacerbated by his reliance on alcohol and an array of prescription drugs, rendered him increasingly frail. His physical appearance began to reflect the internal turmoil, a visible manifestation of his suffering. He found himself increasingly detached from those who had once formed his inner circle. The demands of his deteriorating health, coupled with his unpredictable behaviour, made sustained companionship difficult. Friends and colleagues, many of whom had tried to intervene over the years, found themselves observing from a distance as Hank retreated further into himself. The world, which had once celebrated his every song, now seemed to press in on him, contributing to a pervasive sense of loneliness. Maintaining any semblance of control over his life became an insurmountable challenge. His professional commitments, though fewer than in his heyday, were often met with difficulty. Missed engagements and erratic performances became more frequent, further damaging his professional standing and deepening his financial woes. The brief stability he'd hoped to find in his new marriage to Billie Jean was overshadowed by his personal struggles, preventing it from offering the solace he desperately sought. The medical interventions he received during this period were often inadequate, failing to address the root causes of his pain and addiction. Instead, they often contributed to a complex cycle of dependency. Doctors prescribed a variety of sedatives and painkillers, here attempting to manage his chronic discomfort, but these only served to further cloud his judgment and diminish his physical capabilities. He was caught in a cycle where relief from one ailment often intensified another. As autumn turned to winter, a palpable sense of impending tragedy began to settle around him. His movements became slower, his voice softer, and his gaze often distant. There was a quiet desperation in his attempts to continue performing, to connect with an audience, even as his body betrayed him. The man who had once commanded stages with effortless charisma was now a shadow, striving to maintain a fragile hold on his artistry amidst overwhelming personal collapse. Each day that passed brought him closer to an unknown precipice, an inevitable conclusion to a life lived with extraordinary intensity and profound struggle. The air around him seemed to thicken with a quiet, sorrowful anticipation. New Year's Eve, 1952, marked the beginning of Hank Williams' final journey, a long drive from Montgomery, Alabama, northward to Canton, Ohio. He was scheduled to perform at a New Year's Day concert, an engagement that now felt like an immense undertaking given his fragile state. The decision to embark on such an arduous trip, especially during winter, reflected both a lingering professional obligation and perhaps a subconscious yearning for the stage, despite his profound physical decline. His health at this point was severely compromised. The chronic back pain, a relentless companion throughout his life, was intense, and his body was worn by years of touring, addiction, and personal turmoil. He was emaciated, his face gaunt, and his movements were slow and laboured. Medical reports from the preceding weeks detailed his various ailments, painting a picture of a man teetering on the edge of complete physical breakdown. It was clear that he was not in a condition to travel, let alone perform. Due to his inability to drive himself, a young man named Charles Carr, merely 19 years old, was hired to chauffeur Williams in his blue Cadillac. Carr was a student and an aspiring musician, likely unaware of the full extent of the responsibility he was undertaking or the gravity of Williams' condition. The choice of such a young and relatively inexperienced driver for a journey of this magnitude, with a passenger in such delicate health, underscored the disarray that had come to characterize Williams' life. The Cadillac, a symbol of his earlier success, now carried a passenger who was a shadow of his former self. The winter landscape outside the windows of the car would have been cold and stark as they drove through the night. The route would have taken them through various states, each mile carrying them further north, away from the familiar warmth of the South. The journey itself was likely punctuated by periods of silence, perhaps broken by William's discomfort or the occasional request for assistance. The circumstances of this trip were imbued with a quiet poignancy. It was a final, desperate attempt to fulfill a professional commitment undertaken by a man whose body and spirit were nearing exhaustion. The young driver, unaware of the profound historical significance of his passenger, navigated the roads, carrying a legend towards his ultimate unintended destination. The distant lights of towns passed by, each one a fleeting glimpse of the world Williams was leaving behind, as the Cadillac pressed on through the night towards Canton. As the evening of December 31st, 1952 deepened, the Cadillac carrying Hank Williams and Charles Carr continued its northward journey. The weather grew colder, and the hours passed slowly, marked by the rhythmic hum of the engine and the quiet solitude of the road. Williams, weakened and ill, was largely unresponsive in the back seat. There was a stop in Bristol, Virginia, where Williams was briefly examined by a doctor due to his evident discomfort. The doctor administered 2 shots of morphine and a dose of vitamin B12 to alleviate his pain and improve his condition for the remaining travel. These interventions, while intended to help, each were administered to a body already severely compromised by various substances and chronic ailments. The journey resumed, and the car pressed on through the final hours of the year. As the calendar turned from 1952 to 1953, the Cadillac was somewhere in the mountainous terrain of West Virginia. The world was celebrating a new beginning, but inside the vehicle, a different, more sombre transition was unfolding. In the early morning hours of January 1st, 1953, the car arrived in Oak Hill, West Virginia. Charles Carr pulled into a gas station at around 5:30 a.m. to refuel and to check on his passenger. The air was cold and still, Upon attempting to rouse Williams, Carr found him unresponsive. His body was still, his breathing imperceptible. The young driver, realizing the gravity of the situation, immediately sought help. The discovery was made in the back seat of the blue Cadillac where Williams lay. The local authorities and a doctor were quickly summoned to the scene. Dr. Ivan Malinin, the local physician, officially pronounced Hank Williams dead at 7 a.m. on January 1st, 1953. The official cause of death was attributed to heart failure. The precise moment of his passing remained unclear, but it was determined to have occurred sometime between the late hours of New Year's Eve and the early morning of New Year's Day, while the car was still en route. The news of his death would soon spread, casting a profound shadow over the new year. In the quiet gas station in Oak Hill, West Virginia, the life of a musical legend had ended, far from the bright lights of the stages he had once commanded, in the stillness of a winter morning. And following the discovery of Hank Williams' lifeless body in Oak Hill, West Virginia, an official determination of his passing was promptly made. The attending physician, Dr. Ivan Malinin, formally attributed the cause of death to acute right ventricular dilation, a form of heart failure. This medical finding, while specific, represented the culmination of a complex and prolonged decline in Williams's overall health. It is understood that the heart failure was not an isolated event, but rather the tragic endpoint of a body subjected to immense and sustained strain. For years, Williams had grappled with the debilitating pain of spina bifida occulta, a congenital condition that caused him chronic discomfort. This physical suffering often led him to seek relief through various means, including alcohol and prescription medications. The cumulative effect of these substances on his already compromised system cannot be overstated. His consumption of alcohol was significant and prolonged, placing a heavy burden on his vital organs, particularly his liver and cardiovascular system. Concurrently, his reliance on various prescribed and unprescribed drugs, intended to manage pain or alleviate anxiety, further complicated his physiological state. These substances, when combined, or when taken in excessive quantities, placed extraordinary stress on his heart and other internal systems. The medical assessment of his death also considered the circumstances of his final journey. The long, cold drive, the lack of consistent medical supervision, and the physical discomfort of travelling while gravely ill undoubtedly contributed to the final collapse of his health. The morphine and vitamin B12 injections administered shortly before his death, while intended to mitigate his pain, were introduced into a body already at its breaking point. The interaction of these substances with his existing conditions and previous intake of alcohol and other drugs likely played a role in the rapid deterioration of his cardiac function. Therefore, while heart failure was the immediate cause, it was profoundly exacerbated by a lifestyle marked by chronic pain, escalating addiction, and the relentless demands of his profession. His final months had been characterized by a visible and profound decline, a losing battle against the forces that ultimately overwhelmed his physical being. The official pronouncement of heart failure served as a medical summation of a life that had, for too long, has been under siege from within and without, culminating in a silent and solitary end. The news of Hank Williams's death, filtering through the nascent communication networks of early 1953, struck the country music world and its devoted audience with profound shock and an almost disbelieving grief. It was January 1st, a day typically associated with new beginnings and hopeful prospects, yet for many, it became a date etched with sorrow. The announcement itself carried a particular weight, given Williams's relatively young age. He was merely 29 years old, an age often synonymous with the vigorous flourishing of talent, not its sudden cessation. The initial reports of his passing were met with a stunned silence in many quarters, quickly giving way to an outpouring of sorrow. For fans who had followed his meteoric rise, from humble beginnings to national acclaim, the news was deeply unsettling. Williams had become a voice that resonated profoundly with the experiences of everyday people, his songs articulating their joys, heartaches, and spiritual reflections with an unparalleled authenticity. His passing felt like the loss of a close, trusted confidant, a singer who understood the depths of their own feelings. Within the country music industry, the reaction was particularly poignant. Colleagues, fellow musicians, and industry professionals who had witnessed his genius firsthand, and often his struggles as well, grappled with the finality of his departure. There was a collective recognition that a truly unique and irreplaceable talent had been extinguished far too soon. Many had admired his lyrical prowess and his ability to connect with an audience, even as some had also observed the destructive patterns that shadowed his later years. Yet, the hope often persisted that he might overcome his difficulties and return to his former glory. His death extinguished that hope with a chilling finality. Radio stations, particularly those dedicated to country and western music, were inundated with calls from listeners expressing their dismay and requesting his songs. The airwaves soon became a somber tribute, filled with the plaintive melodies and resonant narratives of Hank Williams. His recordings, from the vibrant optimism of his early hits to the more melancholic reflections of his later work, took on new layers of meaning in the wake of his death. Each lyric seemed to carry an added weight, a premonition, or a final farewell. This immediate public reaction was not merely a fleeting moment of sadness. It was a deep, collective sigh of sorrow that rippled across a nation. It underscored the immense personal connection Williams had forged with his audience, transcending the boundaries of mere entertainment. His untimely passing at such a tender age amplified the tragedy, leaving an indelible mark on the landscape of American popular music and the hearts of those who cherished his art. In the days following his unexpected passing, the focus shifted to Montgomery, Alabama, the city that had served as a significant backdrop for much of Hank Williams's adult life. It was here that his funeral would be held, transforming the city into a focal point for an extraordinary outpouring of public mourning. The event, held at the Montgomery Municipal Auditorium on January 4th, 1953, was not merely a private farewell, but a grand, sombre spectacle, befitting a figure of his immense cultural stature. Thousands of people converged upon Montgomery, far exceeding the capacity of the auditorium. They came from all walks of life, from distant rural communities and nearby towns, driven by a shared sense of loss and a deep desire to pay their final respects. The lines to view his open casket stretched for blocks, testament to the profound connection Williams had forged with his audience. Many waited for hours in the cold January air, their faces etched with grief, a quiet testament to the man whose songs had so deeply touched their lives. The funeral service itself was a solemn affair, marked by a pervasive sense of sorrow and a quiet reverence. The auditorium, usually a venue for lively performances, was transformed into a space of profound lament. The air was heavy with unspoken emotion, a collective acknowledgement of a life cut tragically short. Floral tributes, sent from across the country, adorned the stage, creating a visual testament to the widespread admiration and affection he commanded. Numerous country music stars, many of whom were personal friends or professional colleagues, travelled to Montgomery to attend the service. Figures such as Roy Acuff, Ernest Tubb, Red Foley, and Webb Pierce were among those present, their attendance underscoring Williams' central position within the genre. Their presence was a powerful symbol, not only of their personal grief, but also of the industry's recognition of his irreplaceable contribution. These were individuals who understood the unique magic of his artistry, the raw emotion and poetic truth woven into every melody and lyric. The sight of so many prominent musicians gathered together, united in mourning, conveyed a powerful message about Hank Williams's enduring legacy, even in death. It was a farewell of immense scale, a public acknowledgement of the seismic impact he had made on American music in such a brief span of time. The funeral in Montgomery was more than just a burial. It was a communal rite of passage, marking the physical departure of a legend whose voice would continue to echo through the years. The sombre ceremony served as a poignant final chapter to a life that, though brief, had burned with an extraordinary intensity. In the immediate aftermath of Hank Williams' death, an intriguing phenomenon began to unfold. While his physical presence was gone, the interest in his music, and rather than diminishing, seemed to intensify. His passing, tragic and premature, paradoxically ignited a renewed and deepened fascination with his body of work. The collective grief expressed by his vast fan base translated into a powerful surge in record sales and radio play, demonstrating that his voice, though silenced, continued to resonate profoundly. MGM Records, holding a substantial catalogue of unreleased and previously recorded material, quickly recognized this burgeoning demand. The decision was made to continue releasing his music, a strategy that proved remarkably successful. His final recording session, completed just months before his death, yielded several tracks that would soon find their way to the airwaves. These recordings, imbued with a newfound poignancy given the circumstances, resonated with an even greater emotional depth for listeners. One of the most notable posthumous releases was Cowliga, a song about a wooden Indian who falls in love with an Indian maid across the lake. Released shortly after his death, it quickly climbed to the top of the country charts, spending an astonishing 14 weeks at number 1. Its success was followed by Take These Chains From My Heart, another track from his final session, which also became a major hit. These songs, along with others like Your Cheatin' Heart, which would later become one of his signature tunes, solidified his legend in the minds of the public. The sustained chart success of these posthumous releases was unprecedented for a country artist. It demonstrated not only the enduring quality of his songwriting and performance, but also the profound impact his death had on the public consciousness. His music, now heard through the veil of his tragic end, acquired an almost mythical quality. Each new release was met with an eager audience, eager to hear more from the voice that had so recently been a vibrant presence. Albums compiling his earlier hits and previously unreleased material also found considerable success. These collections allowed fans to delve deeper into his extensive catalogue, discovering songs that might have been overlooked during his lifetime. The continued stream of successful records cemented his legendary status, transforming him from a popular country star into an enduring icon. His music transcended the immediate moment, as becoming a timeless expression of human experience that resonated across generations. The unexpected continuation of his musical success after his death served as a quiet testament to the indelible mark he had left on the landscape of American music. Among the collection of songs released after Hank Williams' death, one composition, in particular, ascended to a unique and enduring prominence: Your Cheatin' Heart. It was recorded during his very last session in September 1952, a period marked by his declining health and profound personal struggles. Despite these difficult circumstances, the song emerged as a testament to his unparalleled lyrical power, a sombre and resonant echo of his own lived experiences. Your Cheatin' Heart was not immediately released. It found its way to radio waves and record players in early 1953, a mere month after his unexpected passing. Its arrival was met with an immediate and widespread embrace. The song's simple yet profoundly evocative lyrics, coupled with Williams's mournful delivery, struck a universal chord. It spoke of betrayal, regret, and the inescapable consequences of dishonesty in matters of the heart, themes that resonated deeply with a broad audience. The song's structure is straightforward, yet its emotional impact is immense. The melody possesses a haunting quality, while the words paint a vivid picture of a conscience burdened by deceit. "Your cheating heart will make you weep," the lyrics proclaim. "You'll cry and try to sleep, but sleep won't come the whole night through." This directness, combined with its profound emotional truth, allowed it to transcend the typical boundaries of a country song. It became a lament for anyone who had experienced or inflicted heartbreak. The success of "Your Cheating Heart" was prodigious. It quickly rose to the top of the country charts, where it remained for 6 weeks, a remarkable feat for a posthumous release. Beyond its commercial triumph, the song became emblematic of Williams' entire artistic output. It encapsulated his ability to distill complex human emotions into concise, memorable verses, delivered with an authenticity that was both raw and captivating. There was also a tragic irony embedded within the song's popularity. Given the well-documented turbulence of Williams's own relationships, particularly his marriage to Audrey Williams, many listeners perceived "Your Cheating Heart" as a deeply personal reflection. It was seen as a commentary on his own struggles, both as the wronged and perhaps the wrongdoer, in the intricate dance of love and infidelity. This perceived autobiographical connection only deepened its resonance, intertwining the song's narrative with the tragic arc of his own life. "Your Cheating Heart" transcended its initial release to become one of the most iconic songs in the history of American music. It has been covered by countless artists across various genres, each rendition a testament to its enduring power and universal appeal. It stands as a powerful symbol of Hank Williams's lyrical genius, a timeless ballad that continues to speak to the complexities of the human heart, forever linked to the poignant legacy of its creator. While Hank Williams is universally celebrated as titan of country music, his profound influence extended beyond the genre's traditional boundaries, subtly but significantly shaping the nascent sounds of rock and roll. This connection, often understated in historical accounts, is crucial for understanding the evolution of popular music in the mid-20th century. Williams's raw emotionality, his embrace of bluesy inflections, and a certain rebellious spirit embedded in his persona and music, collectively laid groundwork for the sonic revolution that was to come. His vocal delivery, marked by a nasal twang and an expressive mournfulness, carried an intensity that resonated deeply. This was not the polished crooning of earlier eras, but a voice imbued with genuine struggle and unvarnished feeling. This raw, direct emotionality was a quality that future rock and roll pioneers would embrace and amplify. They sought to connect with audiences through authenticity, a trait Williams exemplified. Furthermore, Williams frequently incorporated elements that blurred the lines between country and blues. His earlier exposure to Rufus T-Tot Payne, an African-American street performer, had instilled in him an appreciation for blues rhythms and structures. Songs like "Move It On Over" showcased a driving rhythm and a lyrical cadence that was closer to rhythm and blues than traditional country ballads. This blend of styles, whether consciously or instinctively applied, foreshadowed the fusion that would define early rock and roll. The energy and rhythmic propulsion present in some of his faster numbers possessed an undeniable vitality that would be echoed in the energetic performances of rockabilly artists. The rebellious undertone in Williams's life and music also resonated with a generation poised for change. His struggles with addiction, his tumultuous personal life, and his often outspoken nature, even if not intentionally defiant, projected an image of a man living on his own terms. This nonconformist streak, coupled with music that spoke of life's harder truths, provided a template for the anti-establishment ethos that would become a hallmark of rock and roll. Artists like Elvis Presley, who openly admired Williams, and Jerry Lee Lewis, who shared Williams's Louisiana roots and a similar blend of country and blues in his early work, absorbed these influences. Presley's early recordings, steeped in a fusion of country, blues and gospel, bear the imprint of Williams's pioneering spirit. The directness of Williams's storytelling, the emotional rawness of his voice, and the rhythmic drive of his up-tempo numbers all contributed to the foundational elements that rock and roll would build upon, transforming them into a new, electrifying sound. Williams, perhaps unknowingly, was a bridge between the traditional sounds of the American South and the explosive energy of a future musical genre. Beyond the immediate impact of his performances and the posthumous surge in his popularity, Hank Williams established a songwriting benchmark that continues to resonate across genres and generations. He became, and remains, a songwriter's songwriter, revered by those who craft lyrics and melodies for his unparalleled ability to distill profound human experiences into simple, yet deeply resonant, artistic expressions. This gift for clarity and emotional directness set a standard for authenticity that few have matched. Williams possessed an innate understanding of the human condition, particularly its vulnerabilities and yearnings. He articulated feelings of heartbreak, loneliness, spiritual doubt, and fleeting joy with an economy of language that was both poetic and universally accessible. There was no pretense in his words, no elaborate metaphors obscuring the core emotion. Instead, he employed straightforward vocabulary and familiar imagery to paint vivid pictures of life's struggles and small triumphs. This made his songs instantly relatable, allowing listeners to see their own experiences reflected in his narratives. His melodies, too, were often deceptively simple. They were memorable and singable, possessing a timeless quality that transcended fleeting trends. These melodies served as perfect vessels for his lyrical content, enhancing the emotional impact without overshadowing the words. The interplay between his straightforward lyrical narratives and his unadorned yet captivating musical structures created a powerful synergy. This elegant simplicity became a hallmark of his enduring appeal. This profound authenticity became a guiding principle for countless artists who followed. From country troubadours to folk legends and rock icons, many have cited Williams as a primary influence on their approach to songwriting. They learned from him the importance of honesty and expression, the power of a well-chosen phrase, and the enduring strength of a melody that feels both familiar and deeply personal. Bob Dylan, for instance, spoke of Williams's ability to get to the soul of things, a sentiment echoed by Bruce Springsteen, who recognized the working-class narratives embedded in Williams's work. Williams taught subsequent generations that the most profound truths are often found in the simplest statements. His songs did not preach or grandstand. They observed, they felt, and they communicated with an unvarnished sincerity. This commitment to emotional honesty, conveyed through accessible language and memorable tunes, cemented his legacy as a foundational figure in the art of songwriting. His work continues to serve as a masterclass in how to connect with an audience on the deepest human level, proving that true artistry lies not in complexity, but in clarity and heart. In the year 1961, a significant honour was bestowed upon the memory and legacy of Hank Williams, solidifying his place in the annals of American music history. He was inducted into the newly established Country Music Hall of Fame, a recognition that came just 8 years after his untimely passing. This induction was not merely a ceremonial act, it was a profound acknowledgement of his foundational role in shaping the genre, placing him among its very earliest and most revered members. The Country Music Hall of Fame itself was a nascent institution at the time, dedicated to preserving and celebrating the history and achievements of country music. Its first class of inductees was carefully chosen, representing the pillars upon which the entire genre had been built. To be included in this inaugural group, or shortly thereafter, was to be recognized as an architect of country music, someone whose contributions were not just significant but essential. Williams's inclusion in this select company underscored the widespread understanding that his impact transcended mere popularity. He was seen as a seminal figure whose songwriting, vocal delivery, and artistic vision had fundamentally altered the trajectory of country music. His melodies and lyrics, steeped in the experiences of everyday life, had given voice to the common person in a way that resonated deeply and authentically. He had helped define what country music could be, a reflection of joy and sorrow, faith and doubt, all delivered with an unmistakable honesty. The significance of this honour lay in its formal declaration of his enduring importance. It was an official pronouncement from within the industry that Hank Williams was not just a star, but a cornerstone. His work had provided a blueprint for future generations of artists, demonstrating how personal narratives could achieve universal resonance, and how simple musical structures could convey profound emotional depth. The Hall of Fame recognized that his influence extended beyond his own recordings, shaping the very sound and soul of country music for decades to come. His induction served as a powerful testament to the timeless quality of his art. Even in death, his presence loomed large over the genre, and this honour ensured that his contributions would be perpetually remembered and revered. It marked a moment when the country music establishment formally embraced his legacy, acknowledging that his brief, incandescent career had left an indelible mark that demanded permanent recognition. The Country Music Hall of Fame enshrined him as a patriarch, a guiding spirit whose work continues to inform and inspire the genre he helped to define. Beyond the realm of musical influence and industry accolades, Hank Williams transcended his role as a mere musician, evolving into a broader cultural icon. His image, his tragic story, and the profound emotional resonance of his songs have seeped into the collective consciousness, manifesting in a myriad of artistic and popular cultural expressions far removed from the Grand Ole Opry stage. His life, marked by both soaring triumphs and profound struggles, has proven to be fertile ground for narrative exploration. The narrative of the troubled genius, the gifted artist battling inner demons while producing timeless art, is a powerful archetype that Williams embodies with particular poignancy. This personal history, fraught with passion, addiction, and an early demise, has been revisited and reinterpreted across various media. In the cinematic landscape, Hank Williams's story has been brought to the screen multiple times, each adaptation seeking to capture the essence of his complex character and the era he inhabited. These films, whether biographical dramas or more impressionistic portrayals, introduce his narrative to new generations, allowing his legend to persist and evolve. They often delve into the emotional depth of his relationships, the intensity of his creative process, and the struggles that ultimately consumed him, painting a vivid picture of the man behind the music. Similarly, the literary world has embraced Hank Williams as a subject of fascination. Numerous biographies have meticulously chronicled his life, dissecting his motivations, his artistry, and the forces that shaped his destiny. Beyond factual accounts, his spirit and music have inspired works of fiction, poetry, and critical essays, where authors explore themes of American identity, the nature of fame, and the enduring power of raw, honest expression. His lyrics, often simple yet profoundly evocative, are frequently quoted and analysed, recognised for their poetic beauty and their insight into the human condition. Furthermore, Williams's presence can be felt in other artistic expressions, from theatrical productions that dramatize his life to visual art that draws inspiration from his imagery and the era he defined. His distinctive silhouette, often depicted with a guitar and a Stetson, has become an emblem of a certain kind of American authenticity. His songs are woven into the soundtracks of countless films and television shows, providing a melancholic or celebratory backdrop that instantly evokes a sense of time and place. This widespread cultural penetration ensures that even those unfamiliar with the specifics of his biography often possess a subconscious awareness of the Hank Williams mystique. He is a figure whose legend continues to resonate, his story a timeless American ballad, retold through diverse artistic lenses. The musical legacy of Hank Williams did not conclude with his passing. Instead, it found a unique continuation through his son, Randall Hank Williams, who would come to be known as Hank Williams Jr. Born just weeks before his father's death, Hank Williams Jr. inherited not only a famous name but also a profound musical inclination, navigating a path that was both blessed by lineage and burdened by immense expectation. Carrying the name Hank Williams presented a distinct set of challenges and triumphs. From a very young age, Hank Jr. was encouraged, and at times pressured, to emulate his legendary father. His early career saw him performing his father's songs, often dressed in similar attire, a poignant reenactment of a legacy he never fully experienced firsthand. This initial phase, while a tribute, also created a struggle for individual identity in the shadow of such a monumental figure. The public and industry naturally sought a continuation of the original Hank, placing a heavy mantle upon the young artist. However, Hank Williams Jr. eventually forged his own distinct path, moving beyond mere imitation to establish a unique musical identity. He embraced a more eclectic sound, incorporating elements of southern rock, blues, and contemporary country, diverging from the pure honky-tonk style of his father. This evolution was not without its difficulties, but it ultimately allowed him to carve out a highly successful career defined by his own songwriting and performance style. He became a multi-platinum artist, a formidable presence in country music, and a cultural icon in his own right, affectionately known to his fans as Bocephus. The triumphs of Hank Williams Jr. include numerous awards, chart-topping hits, and a loyal fan base that recognized his distinct artistic voice. His ability to honor his father's memory, while simultaneously creating an authentic and separate musical persona, is a testament to his resilience and talent. He demonstrated that a legacy could be carried forward not just through replication, but through reinterpretation and personal artistic growth. This musical lineage has continued into subsequent generations. Hank Williams III, son of Hank Williams Jr., has also pursued a career in music, further diversifying the family's sound by delving into punk, metal, and traditional country, again navigating the complexities of a celebrated surname. Similarly, other members of the Williams family, including Holly Williams and Hillary Williams, have contributed to the musical landscape, each adding their own chapter to this remarkable family story. The Williams name, therefore, remains synonymous with a certain enduring spirit of American music, a testament to the profound and lasting impact of the original Hank Williams, whose influence continues to echo through the voices and creative expressions of his descendants. Even decades after his passing, the artistic output of Hank Williams continues to reveal new facets, thanks to the ongoing discovery and careful curation of previously unreleased recordings and live performances. These archival discoveries are more than mere curiosities. They are vital pieces of a larger mosaic, continually enriching our understanding of his artistry, his evolution as a performer, and the subtle nuances of his career that were not fully captured by his commercial studio releases. One significant category of these findings includes the health and happiness shows, a series of radio programs recorded for Mother's Best Flower in Nashville during 1951. These transcriptions, which remained largely unheard for many years, and offer an intimate glimpse into Williams' live performances and his interactions with his band, the Drifting Cowboys. Unlike the more controlled studio environment, these radio broadcasts capture the raw energy and spontaneity of his stage presence, revealing his remarkable ability to connect with an unseen audience. The Mother's Best recordings feature not only his well-known hits, but also gospel songs, humorous banter, and lesser-known compositions, providing a broader spectrum of his musical interests and capabilities. Their eventual release allowed listeners to experience Hank Williams in a more unvarnished, authentic setting, closer to what an audience would have heard at a live show. Beyond the Mother's Best sessions, other fragments of his work have periodically emerged. These include various demo recordings, alternative takes from studio sessions and recordings from other radio appearances or informal gatherings. Each new discovery contributes to a more comprehensive picture, filling in gaps in the historical record and offering fresh perspectives on his creative process. For instance, a different vocal inflection on a familiar song, or a slightly altered arrangement, can provide subtle clues about his artistic intentions or the collaborative dynamic within his band. The meticulous work of archivists, music historians, and record labels in unearthing, restoring, and releasing these materials ensures that the legacy of Hank Williams remains vibrant and dynamic. These lost recordings serve as a bridge across time, allowing contemporary audiences to connect more deeply with an artist who left us too soon. They underscore the enduring power of his music and the timeless quality of his songwriting, reminding us that even after many years, there are still layers to uncover within the profound artistry of Hank Williams. Each newly heard note or vocal phrase adds another dimension to the legend, continuously shaping our appreciation for his genius. Hank Williams occupies an undeniable and elevated position within the grand tapestry of American music history. His impact extends far beyond the confines of country music, establishing him as a pivotal figure whose work transcended genres and eras. He stands as a crucial bridge, connecting the deeply rooted traditions of American folk and early country music with the emerging sounds of modern popular music, demonstrating a unique ability to synthesize the past and foreshadow the future. His genius lay in his capacity to distill complex human emotions into simple, yet profoundly resonant lyrical forms. Williams drew heavily from the wellspring of traditional Southern music, incorporating elements of blues, gospel, and Appalachian folk into his distinctive style. Yet he was no mere imitator. He possessed an innate understanding of melody and rhythm, crafting songs that were both instantly memorable and emotionally complex. His compositions, often characterized by their directness and vulnerability, spoke to universal experiences of love, loss, hardship, and redemption, making them accessible and relatable to a vast audience, regardless of their musical preferences. Williams was, in essence, an innovator. He refined the role of the singer-songwriter, demonstrating how personal narratives could be transformed into universal anthems. His sparse instrumentation, often centered around his own acoustic guitar, combined with his distinctive vocal delivery, created a sound that was both raw and polished. This approach influenced countless artists who followed, demonstrating that authenticity and emotional honesty could be powerful forces in popular music. He showed that a song could be both deeply personal and widely appealing, a concept that would become fundamental to rock and roll and many other genres. The enduring power of his compositions, which continue to be recorded and performed by artists across the musical spectrum, attest to his foundational significance. From rock and roll pioneers to contemporary folk artists, musicians have consistently returned to his catalogue, finding in his work a timeless quality and an emotional depth that remains profoundly relevant. Hank Williams did not just create songs, he established a template for heartfelt expression in popular music, securing his place as an indispensable architect of the American musical landscape. His legacy is not merely preserved, it actively continues to shape the sounds we hear today. The music of Hank Williams possesses an intrinsic quality that defies the passage of time, continuing to resonate deeply with audiences across generations, decades after his untimely departure. This enduring appeal can be attributed to several interwoven factors: the universality of his chosen themes, the raw and unflinching honesty embedded in his lyrical expressions, and the enduring power of his deceptively simple yet profoundly moving melodies. At the core of Williams' timelessness lies his remarkable ability to articulate fundamental human experiences. His songs explore the depths of heartbreak, the solace of faith, the pain of loneliness, the joy of fleeting love, and the quiet struggles of everyday existence. These are emotions that transcend cultural boundaries and historical epochs. Whether one lives in the mid-20th century or the 21st, the ache of a lost love or the yearning for spiritual peace remains a constant aspect of the human condition. Williams presented these themes without pretense, crafting narratives that felt deeply personal yet universally understood. Furthermore, the raw honesty in his songwriting is a powerful magnet. There is an unvarnished quality to his words, a directness that bypasses artifice and speaks directly to the listener's soul. He did not shy away from expressing vulnerability, pain, or regret. This authenticity creates an immediate connection, fostering a sense of shared experience between the artist and the audience. Listeners feel that Williams understood their struggles, their joys, and their sorrows because he so openly laid bare his own. This genuine emotional transparency is a rare and precious commodity in any art form, and it is a cornerstone of his lasting impact. Complementing these lyrical strengths are the enduring power and simplicity of his melodies. Williams had an intuitive grasp of what makes a tune memorable and affecting. His compositions often feature straightforward chord progressions and uncluttered arrangements, allowing the melody and the lyrics to take center stage. These melodies are not overly complex, yet they possess an exquisite beauty and a haunting quality that lodges in the memory. They are often infused with a melancholic grace, perfectly complementing the emotional weight of his words. This combination of universal themes, raw honesty, and powerful, accessible melodies ensures that Hank Williams' music remains as relevant and moving today as it was when first recorded, continuing to touch the hearts of new listeners with each passing year. The life of Hank Williams, though remarkably brief in its duration, was lived with an intensity that few ever experience. Spanning merely 29 years, from his birth in rural Alabama to his quiet passing on the first day of 1953, his earthly journey was a vibrant tapestry, woven with both profound creative brilliance and persistent personal struggle. Yet, despite the brevity of his time, he managed to leave an imprint so vast and enduring that it continues to shape the landscape of American music. From his earliest days, a palpable passion for music seemed to guide his every step. It was not merely a profession for Williams, it was an innate, consuming force that propelled him forward, often against formidable odds. This passion manifested in a relentless work ethic, driving him to write, perform, and record with an urgency that now, in retrospect, appears almost prophetic. He approached his craft with a singular dedication, pouring his entire being into each lyric, each melody, each performance. This commitment was evident in the raw emotion he conveyed and the authentic connections he forged with his audiences, whether in packed auditoriums or on crackling radio waves. The immense body of work he created within such a compressed time frame is a testament to this unparalleled drive. His discography, though not extensive by modern standards, is dense with compositions that are now considered cornerstones of American popular music. Each song, whether a rollicking honky-tonk number or a mournful ballad, carries the unmistakable stamp of his genius. It is a legacy rich not only in quantity, but more importantly, in profound quality and emotional resonance. He distilled complex human experiences into accessible, poignant expressions, creating a catalogue that speaks to the deepest parts of the human spirit. His life, though marked by periods of great difficulty and personal turmoil, was fundamentally defined by this fervent dedication to his art. The challenges he faced, perhaps paradoxically, yet often fueled his creative output, providing him with a wellspring of profound emotion from which to draw. He transformed his struggles into universal anthems of heartache and hope, leaving behind a collection of songs that continue to offer solace, understanding, and joy. In reflecting upon his brief existence, one cannot help but marvel at how much was accomplished, how deeply he felt, and how intensely he lived, leaving an indelible mark that far transcends the span of his physical years. In the timeless melodies and heartfelt lyrics of Hank Williams, one encounters a profound interplay between melancholy and an undeniable magic. His life, marked by a succession of personal trials, seemed to infuse his artistic output with a deep sense of sorrow and longing. This inherent sadness, a thread woven through many of his most iconic songs, he often reflected the very real struggles he faced: heartache, addiction, and a pervasive sense of restlessness. Yet, it was precisely this genuine engagement with human suffering that lent his music its extraordinary power and authenticity. The melancholy in his work was never merely self-pity. Rather, it was an honest reflection of universal human experience. He possessed a unique ability to articulate feelings of loneliness, regret, and unrequited love in a way that resonated deeply with listeners from all walks of life. This raw honesty, stripped of pretension, allowed his audience to find their own emotions mirrored in his compositions, forging a powerful, empathetic connection that endures to this day. Alongside this pervasive sadness, there existed a captivating magic. This magic was evident in his uncanny knack for crafting simple, yet unforgettable melodies. It resided in his lyrical precision, where every word seemed perfectly chosen to evoke a specific sentiment. It was present in the subtle inflections of his voice, which could convey a wealth of emotion with minimal effort. This artistic alchemy transformed his personal anguish into something beautiful and universally relatable, transcending the specifics of his own life to touch the hearts of millions. His struggles, rather than hindering his art, often served as its potent fuel. The pain he endured, the mistakes he made, and the joys he fleetingly experienced all contributed to the rich tapestry of his creative expression. It was through the crucible of his own human experience that he forged songs of such profound emotional depth and timeless appeal. This transformation of personal adversity into artistic triumph is perhaps the most enduring aspect of his legacy. It reminds us that even in the deepest shadows magic can be found, and that the most profoundly human art often emerges from the complex interplay of life's most challenging and tender moments. As the quiet moments unfold, the story of Hank Williams gently comes to a close, yet his voice, a singular and resonant presence, continues to echo through the corridors of time. It is a whisper that carries the weight of a brief but intensely lived existence, a testament to the enduring power of authentic expression. Though his earthly journey concluded abruptly, the sound of his singing, the poetry of his words, and the simple beauty of his melodies persist, reaching across decades and generations. And his legacy is not merely a collection of recordings or a list of chart-topping hits. It is living, breathing testament to the profound impact one individual can have through the honest sharing of their heart. The struggles and triumphs that defined his path were all poured into his craft, creating an artistic output that remains remarkably vital and relevant. Listeners continue to find solace, understanding, and companionship in his songs, proving that true artistry transcends temporal boundaries. The echo of Hank Williams's voice is a reminder that sincerity in creation holds an unparalleled strength. He did not seek to invent complex musical structures or to follow fleeting trends. Instead, he drew directly from the wellspring of human emotion, articulating universal feelings with a directness that was both disarming and deeply moving. This unvarnished authenticity is the core of his lasting appeal, allowing his music to resonate with new audiences even today, long after his passing. His presence in the cultural landscape is not one of a fading memory, but of a quiet, persistent influence. From the subtle inflections in a modern country ballad to the raw emotion of a blues-infused rock song, fragments of his groundbreaking approach can still be discerned. He remains a guiding star for those who seek to convey truth through song, a quiet authority on the power of simplicity and heartfelt communication. And so, as the narrative of his life settles into history, the whisper of his voice continues to drift, a gentle yet powerful echo. It invites a sense of peace, a quiet contemplation of a life that, though short, left an indelible mark on the human spirit. His music, born of both joy and sorrow, offers a timeless comfort, a gentle assurance that the most profound expressions often come from the deepest parts of the heart, continuing to resonate long after the final note has faded. And so, as the final notes of this quiet contemplation begin to softly fade, we are left with the gentle resonance of a life that, though marked by both brilliance and profound sorrow, continues to inspire and comfort. The journey through the life of Hank Williams has been one of observation, tracing the arc of an artist whose impact far outstripped his brief time on Earth. His story, like his music, carries a certain melancholic beauty, an understanding of the human condition that remains undimmed by the passage of years. Imagine, if you will, the quiet strum of a guitar in the twilight, a voice rising with a simple, honest melody. This is the enduring image of Hank Williams, a figure whose contributions to music are not loud or ostentatious, but rather deeply woven into the fabric of American culture. His songs, born from personal experience and universal emotion, continue to offer a soothing balm, a quiet companionship in the stillness of the night. As the world outside grows quiet and thoughts begin to drift, consider the subtle power of a song to connect, to heal, and to transcend. Hank Williams achieved this with an effortless grace, transforming his struggles into art that speaks to the heart of us all. There is a peaceful wisdom in his legacy, a reminder that authenticity, even in its rawest form, possesses an eternal light. Allow the echoes of his melodies to gently guide your mind towards a state of rest. Let the contemplation of his life, his music, and his lasting spirit settle softly within you. The narrative has unfolded, revealing the contours of a remarkable existence, and now a sense of calm reflection remains. The story of Hank Williams, a testament to the enduring power of a singular voice, now recedes into the quiet expanse of history, leaving behind a legacy that continues to gently resonate. May these final thoughts bring a sense of peace, a tranquil closing to this journey. Allow yourself to drift, to find solace in the quiet contemplation, as the world outside fades into gentle slumber. All that remains is the soft, comforting silence, and the lingering echo of a timeless melody